James Boyd, Mark Dykton, sloughing off again, Kev. Here we go. Sloughing off again. No, they'll be back tomorrow working hard down there at the owners' meetings with James Boyd for The Athletic. Also, Mark Dykton taking some much-deserved vacation. It gives us another opportunity to hang out with Corbin today. How you doing, my man? Good day for you?
Good. Yes,
Have we counted the Mark Dykton vacation days?
I'm going to have to go back and audit that because I think it started right before I got back.
I swear he's got more than I do.
I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what's going on with him, but that's
He'll be
where
at
we're
Disney here in 2 weeks, I guarantee you.
Yeah. Give him 2. Maybe the week. He'll probably say, the week of the draft. We had this special deal with the
Mickey Mouse dressed up as the Easter Bunny. We're going to head back down there, yeah.
You should put some pressure on him if he's going to do that. He's got to take you guys and Max and Rose.
Boy,
and
I don't know.
else.
I feel like talking to some parents who want to delay the Disney experience as late as possible.
It's not that bad, is it?
Well, I don't know. Hearing Mark say how much alcohol he's got to drink to get through the Disney experience, then that probably speaks for itself.
I don't know. I always had a great time. I had 2 little boys, though. They were ready to go. I don't know. Your guys would be ready to go, I would think, right?
We'll delay. Delay.
All right. Quiet night for us last night. There was some NIT action over at the Fieldhouse, and talk about that a little bit later on. But rules changes have actually been passed, voted on, or tabled at the NFL owners meetings, Kevin. Of everything that took place yesterday, what was most significant to you?
Well, honestly, I think we should start with the Pacers clinching a playoff spot. I know they did.
Yeah, no, you're right. They without benefit of having played.
Top 6 seed, when they were 10-15 at the start of the year, I don't know if we would have got to April 2nd and thought, they will not be sweating for the final 6 or 7 games of the season. Certainly last year, it went down to the wire. The Eastern Conference was extremely, extremely jumbled. So I know this season didn't have the early year high of last year. You had the big in-season tournament success last season, and for the most part, the Pacers, you always felt pretty good about it, although the standings didn't allow for you to maybe rest, if you will, throughout last season. But this year, the fact that they have clinched here with about a week and a half to go, that does allow for Rick Carlisle to, kind of manage his roster if he would like. He didn't sound entirely open to it, but I also didn't think he slammed the door shut to it when we spoke with him yesterday, certainly about Pascal Siakam specifically. Obviously, they still need to clinch home court, but they have clinched a top 6 seed, no play-in action for the Pacers. So probably goal number 1, if you will, or I should say a goal on the list, has been accomplished with the Hawks losing last night.
What do you think it was when they were 10-15? And I know that they had players in and out of the lineup, specifically Halliburton coming off the Olympics and stuff like that. What do you think it took 25 games to kind of get this team going and get it in gear?
Well, I think a little bit of health, just in general, Tyrese. When you look at him exiting the summer, and especially with the Olympic team, and how beat up he was really all summer long. And, I think he's admitted that he rushed to play the 65 games last year to try to get the All-NBA team. So I think that contributed to it. But, outside of that, the Nembhard and Nesmith injuries, those are, I think, important guys. When you hear Rick Carlisle discuss with us yesterday about ecosystem and what those guys mean, I think those injuries, caused some issues for this team as well early in the season. And it's kind of wild to think tonight they have the Hornets. And I almost kind of view the Charlotte Hornets to the Pacers as like the Jacksonville Jaguars to the Colts. The Pacers can't beat the Hornets.
Why do we have that one team all the time? I suppose every team does, but
the Hornets are going for a season sweep of the Pacers.
And they don't want that. I happened to be listening to Charlotte radio for a few minutes this morning, and they're like, they were almost they were looking at the injury report, which is almost non-existent for them, which almost never happens. And the 2 morning guys there were almost begging the Hornets to not win this basketball game against the Pacers.
Yeah, it seems like they've been begging all year for them not to win, and seemingly they still win. I think it's the biggest favorite the Pacers have been all season, for what it's worth. 14-point favorite, and Charlotte is banged up, right? No LaMelo Ball, no Brandon Miller.
Yeah, they're out for the rest of the season, but Mark Williams, who's been in and out of the lineup a lot this year, is supposed to play tonight. Nick Richards had been banged up. I think he's not on the list. So, yeah, they were very worried in Charlotte that they're going to screw up having the 3 best, the odds with the NBA draw, the lottery, all that kind of stuff. The top 3, I think, are at about 14.5%, something like that.
So, yeah, we'll see about the
They're all
Pacers
in on that.
health-wise tonight.
Yeah.
Benedict Mather and Miles Turner, they have been upgraded to questionable, so still some chances for those two to play tonight. But, yeah, I think you start there. I know it's maybe not the most ceremonial, clinch of the playoffs when another team loses on a random Tuesday night and you don't even play. But nonetheless, the Pacers do clinch a top 6 spot, and given where the franchise had been in recent years, that is not always a foregone conclusion.
Not bad coming off of an Eastern Conference run, though, where they were defeated in the finals last year against the Boston Celtics. But they're putting themselves in position again, and I still think they're a tough out in a 7-game series in the Eastern Conference, no matter who they play. So am I predicting they go back to the Eastern Conference Finals? I don't know. I think it's probably 50-50. But beyond that, do I think they're the best team necessarily day in, day out in the Eastern Conference? Probably not quite that. But I do think they're a tough out in a 7-game series.
Yeah, I think they definitely are. I made the video game analogy of you got to end the Pacers, and not to get too graphic or too gory with that, but I think, defeating them, 4 times in a 7-game series is not going to be some layup. So again, Pacers, Hornets tonight, and they'll have the Jazz coming up on Friday, and they are still trying to clinch home court. In good position to do that, a top 4 seed, and in all likelihood right now, it looks like Pacers-Pistons seems to be the trending matchup for round 1.
And, of course, 3-1 was the season series. We talked about that yesterday as well. Takeaways, now that you've had a day to think about it, some of your conversation with Rick Carlisle yesterday, we'll hear some of that coming up in a few minutes. But anything just off the top of your head that you thought was really, I don't know, profound is probably the wrong word, but especially poignant heading down the stretch here?
Yeah, again, do they sit Siakam? To me, he just has looked fatigued over the last 2 weeks. I think his numbers back some of that up as well. And again, we hold guys to obviously different standards. You hold Halliburton to a different standard than McConnell. You hold Siakam to a different standard than Jarris Walker. And we just aren't used to, I think, seeing this out of Siakam. And he's never sat. I mean, he's missed 1 game in a year plus here. So, it seemed like Rick was a little bit open-minded to that. We can play that clip upcoming here in a bit. They do have a back-to-back next week.
Mm-hmm.
That's their final one of the season. Maybe that is when you would explore something like that. You obviously will get the long break for the playoffs. Part of clinching the top 6 seed, I want to say their final game is a week from Sunday afternoon. Then I don't think you play until at least the next Saturday.
Yeah, it's either, I think it's Friday or Saturday. Well, it depends, yeah.
So you got a handful of days.
Yeah.
Anyways there. And obviously once you get in the postseason, you don't play back-to-backs, et cetera, et cetera. But I would say that would be something to watch. And, maybe we also just kind of play the general, because I thought Carlisle expanded on it pretty extensively. It's more of a hot-button topic, I think, around the NBA. Load management, managing your roster. How do you do it late in the season? You hear college coaches talk all the time. When you get to January and February, you dial back a lot of your practice time. Obviously in the NBA, with them playing so often, they don't really have true practices. So, again, how do you kind of manage that? I thought Rick was pretty expansive on that answer.
All right, we'll talk about that a little bit as the day goes on, too. And, the other thing that I think primes the Pacers well for the postseason, I like that stretch, 7 days ago to 2 weeks ago, where they were just somehow escaping with victories. Remember that little stretch there for 3 or 4 games? They were just finding ways to win. I find that with teams, as time goes on, you do that a couple of times, 3 times, 4 times. You get into the postseason, you get in a tough spot, you're down 7 with 1 minute and 10 seconds to go. You're not really freaking out about it all that much. You're thinking, hey, we can find a way to do this.
Yeah, it's probably not fire you want to continue to play with. But, yeah, when you get into those inevitable end-of-game situations, I will be curious if the Pacers are a little bit calmer. Maybe that's the better word than other teams. I mean, certainly last year in the Boston series, it kind of went the reverse. The Pacers looked like the team, kind of peeing down their leg in that series. And obviously in the month of March, they were the exact opposite of that. So definitely something to keep an eye on.
All right, we'll check it down coming up in just a moment here. We've got Stephen Holder on the way. Give us his take from the NFL owners meetings and what he heard from Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen over the last couple of days. We'll also take some of your feedback today as well at 239-1070 as we continue on the Fan Morning Show with KB and Jeff today. James Boyd is off, coming back from the owners meetings. Corbin Lingenfelder is here as well. We'll do it all in a moment on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. KB, let's start with the fact that the Indiana Pacers are in the postseason again with, 7 games for them to play yet, right?
I think so, right? 44-31, does that sound right?
Yeah. So they're on their way, and it looks like they're edging closer to locking up the 4th spot in the Eastern Conference as well. They've got a couple of games advantage on the Detroit Pistons. They've got the head-to-head over the Detroit Pistons, who are currently in 5th, and the Bucks are without Damian Lillard the rest of the way and seem to be going the wrong direction, although they did win the other night.
Yeah, so the Pacers, in a definitely a great position. Now, granted, they see a team tonight that on paper they should handle easily, but that has not happened at all this season. The Hornets have actually won the first 2 meetings. Now, no Brandon Miller, no LaMelo Ball. The Pacers are a 14-point favorite. That is the biggest they have been all year long. 7 o'clock inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Benedict Mather and Miles Turner, both questionable, so an opportunity for them to play. So, again, in a nice position to clinch that 4 seed here, maybe by the end of this week. So it'll be home tonight Hornets, home tonight Jazz, and then at Denver coming up this weekend.
No, last night was the night the Bucks won 133-123 over the Phoenix Suns. Also, crazy game. Did you watch any of the Timberwolves-Nuggets game on TNT
that
last
ending
night?
was absolutely wild. Nikola Jokic, 61 points, 11 rebounds, and 10 assists. And also Steph Curry. Like on their Hall of Fame resumes, we added a couple last night as if we needed to. Steph Curry, 52, 10, and 8.
Incredible. At the end of that Nuggets game last night, the Nuggets are up 139-138. They have the ball with time winding down. Russell Westbrook drives the lane, goes up for what looks like will be either a dunk or an easy layup.
Russell Westbrook turned into Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, he turned the ball over instead of scoring off the rim, and then he fouled the guy on a three-point play on the other end.
It's
with
the most
1/10 of a
Russell
second to
Westbrook
go.
sequence you'll ever see.
So anyway, that's happening in the NBA. Butler plays tonight for the College Basketball Crown Championship in Las Vegas against Boise State. Who you got there, Kev?
Yeah, quarterfinal game. Not
it's quarterfinal. That's right.
Not championship. Yeah,
they'll move this
quarterfinal
weekend.
game.
They move closer to this weekend. Sorry.
Yeah,
about that.
so if they win tonight, they do. I think get some money. I want to say it's like $50,000 if you become a semifinalist. Boise was one of the final teams in, right, or final teams out, I should say. Weren't they just behind Indiana?
They were right. They were getting some love until the last day.
If I remember that correctly. So yeah, 7 o'clock tonight for Butler. Speaking of Butler, over at Hinkle Fieldhouse. Chattanooga and UC Irvine. That'll be your NIT championship coming up on Thursday nights. And Butler did get a portal commitment yesterday. I think some fans of high school basketball around the state will remember the name of Jalen Jackson, a Fort Wayne Northrop kid. Began at Illinois Chicago, over at Purdue Fort Wayne last year. Just a scoring guard, maybe not this elite three-point shooter, but a scoring guard, which Butler loses a lot of scoring here. Coming up this offseason, averaged 19 a game for the Mastodons, so he will be off to play for Thad Matta next season.
The other thing I saw yesterday in the transfer portal, you see Kansas big guy not only declared for the portal, got eligible for a 5th year. Or no, the 7th season he'll be in there, but he's going to play for his 5th year.
Dickinson?
Yes, he's in the portal now.
That's got to be an April Fool's joke.
I'm hoping so because that
Did you fall for an April Fool's joke? Did you fall for the Tiger Woods joke like I did for 2 minutes?
I may have. It says right here, I'm looking at something from Athlon Sports. Kansas Hunter Dickinson announces new NIL deal amid NCAA tournament. So maybe that's what it was yesterday. Maybe I did fall late last night for that.
God,
it's possible.
Just a sickening thought if that's
now,
true.
what was fun was to watch you for about 15 seconds believe the Tiger Woods won yesterday.
I know. And I cried, and Corbin laughed at me.
Do you, here's my fatal flaw with April Fools. I tend to forget the actual date of days. I tend to be a Monday through Friday. Here's what I got to do Monday. Here's what I got to do Tuesday. Because you get those weekly calendars that come up, Kev. I don't really look at the date. I just look at all the things I have to do. And so I'll forget that it's actually April Fool's Day at some point during the day. That's what makes me most vulnerable.
It's the worst day of the year.
That's what makes me most vulnerable.
Ryan Conwell, shout out to the Pike product. Thought could be a little Darren DeVries, Indiana action on that front. But he is off to Louisville with Pat Kelsey on joining the Cardinals, who obviously had a pretty nice year.
Yep.
Minus them bowing out in the tournament in round 1.
All right, NFL rules changes from the NFL owners' meetings yesterday. Overtime in the postseason and regular season going to look a lot more similar, Kevin. 15 minutes in the postseason, 10 minutes in the regular season. Both teams will get the ball no matter what. Even if you go down and score a touchdown on your first possession, other team's going to get the ball.
I like it. Yeah, I'm good with it. I think both teams should have the ability to possess it. The old rule, of course, if you scored a touchdown, the game would be over.
Right.
The other team wouldn't have gotten an opportunity. If you just kicked a field goal, they would. It sounds like we'll get more kick returns. I like that they have increased the touchback to the 35-yard line, so punishing teams that just booted in the end zone. A lot of teams did decide to do that last year with the new dynamic kickoff. Tush push has been tabled, so it is still on for 2025. So I think 16 votes. They needed 24 to take that play out. Outside of that, anything else I missed?
There were a couple of little things. The way that replay assist is going to change a little bit. There are a couple of things that they will not make the call from the booth, but they now have more. They have more leeway up there to overturn something that they see that was not a penalty. For example, if somebody gets called for a flag like a face mask, but there's clear evidence that he never touched the guy's face mask, they can overturn that. They cannot go back and call the face mask. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I did see that. It sounds like, I forget who it was, maybe the Lions proposed if you have a good enough record and you finish second in your division, you should get the home game in the playoffs and not the division champ.
Right.
Should get it. I saw Chris Ballard was heavily against that. I think when you play in the lowly AFC South, you want all the home games you can get for winning the division. Clearly, it hasn't happened in 10 years, but that did not pass. So I would say all in all, kind of a quiet, owners' meetings in the sense of, big-time rule changes or anything from an implementation standpoint.
Here's what I'm disappointed in, though. It looks like we're moving closer and closer to the elimination of the chains and the chain gang. They say they're comfortable with the new Hawkeye technology that they kind of borrowed from tennis.
Man, AI is taking jobs away from the NFL.
Which is fine, and I like the precision of it. But isn't there something wonderfully dramatic in a key situation? 4th down and inches at the end of a game. Your first down gives you an opportunity to win. If you get stopped there, the game is over, and you have to stop and wait. And the guys come out, and they set the chains.
Here comes your science teacher from Fall Creek Valley Middle School out here with the chains.
Is that not great drama?
No, it is great drama. Obviously they're moving a little bit slower out there as well. It is some great theater on that front. Shout out to everybody over at Victory Field last night. Unfortunately, the Indians did lose their opener 2-1, 2 in the ninth there from the Iowa Cubs. The big league Cubs continue to feast on the AAA team in Sacramento. They've now evened up their record. The Reds lose because they can't hit, and the Dodgers can't lose.
Well, they could hit the day before, and Ellie had a single, a double, and 2 home runs. They got shut out last night.
Did the torpedo bats all of a sudden, evaporate? Did they go in the Ohio River there?
Wait, you mean like 1 week was not enough of a sample size to know whether these things are truly responsible for offensive outbursts, or maybe some of the guys playing are pretty good baseball players?
Dodgers are 7-0.
Man,
over under 108 wins.
They are. What was the over under to start the season? It was like 102 or 103.
I was going to say I think it was north of 100.
And now you start off 7-0, things start to change, and then they just keep rolling Cy Young pitchers out on the mound every day, too. So that's what's going on the world of sports. Coming up in a minute, if you missed any of the Rick Carlisle interview that KB had yesterday with the head coach of the Indiana Pacers, a couple of key minutes coming your way next here. We'll talk about it and let you hear some of it on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Oh, dark and dramatic today, Corbin. I like it.
You
Good
know who
stuff.
we lost yesterday, right?
Say again?
You know who we lost yesterday, right?
A little Val Kilmer tribute right there, Corbin.
That's one you were hoping was an April Fool's joke, but that's tough stuff. What's your favorite Val Kilmer movie?
Oh, you gotta go with Top Gun.
Yeah,
right?
I think that's the one. He did one called The Saint too that I think Elizabeth Shue was in that was really fun to watch too. I always liked all the stuff that he did, and of course the Wyatt Earp movies. Tombstone with
yeah, certainly Batman.
Kurt Russell. Good stuff.
Yeah, rest in peace. 65 years old.
Man, it's way too young, KB. Way too young. Hey, just want to point out too. We don't talk about it a ton, but a wind advisory. It's going to be really windy around parts of central and southern Indiana today, over 40 miles per hour at times. It's going to get really warm today. And in the springtime, you know what happens when it gets windy and warm later on, KB? We have the threat of tornadoes and things like that. So this afternoon and this evening, if you're anywhere around central southern Indiana, look out for some tough stuff.
It sounds like late tonight into tomorrow even. So
they said between 5 p.m. and 3 a.m. right now.
Yeah, hopefully no sirens whatsoever, but the old siren at 1 a.m. or 2 a.m., not good for anybody here, especially Corbin as a young dog father. Trying to...
Yeah, how's it? You were things are up and down with training the pup, right? As they always are.
Yeah, they were good last week, and now we're back down, going up, back down.
That's how it goes. And then one day they turn into everything falls into place for them, and they're good to go.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how it works. You just got to keep working with them. But, man,
sounds like the Colts quarterback competition.
They're the best. I would say that the Colts need to go a ways to live up to some of the pups.
This might be a horrible analogy. Feel free to tell me if it is horrible. But, again, this Colts quarterback competition sounds like split reps here for Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones. I might go with the young parent analogy here of, Jeff, at one point you were potty training your two sons, correct?
Yeah.
And, I don't know your method of potty training, but, some of our methods have been, you keep the child naked for a period of time. Now, the expectation is if you keep them naked for one weekend,
they're going to figure it out, right?
Well, that's probably wishful thinking. You're probably going to have to do it for a few more days than just one weekend, or you might have to string some days together. This is not just hey, let's throw them out there, and 48 hours later, we'll have a couple spills, and we'll be good to go. I kind of compare that to the Colts quarterback competition with these two, in that these splitting of reps, you're literally saying, yeah, for one day, we'll just keep Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson naked, and we'll potty train them, and we'll be good. We're not going to commit to them for more than just one day, because the next day we've got to do the other one. And then the next day we got to go back to the other guy. To me, it's a very half-assed attempt, I guess, pun intended there, in trying to commit to one of these players. And at the end of it, I see two mediocre quarterbacks not getting significantly better. And by the end of your potty training session, you'll have two young kids that are not potty trained.
Here's another fear, and this is what happened with one of my kids.
Horrible analogy or no?
We're going to roll with it right now. We're going to roll with it as much as it may smell just a little bit. We'll roll with it for a second. But with one of my kids, essentially taught himself, and we're like, man, this is great. This is easy.
You got a modern Einstein in your family.
But then all of a sudden, like after 6 months, it's like he never did. It's like he never knew what to do. And so we had to really start over potty training him again after he had figured it out.
That sounds like a nightmare for the Colts.
But that kind of, would you be shocked if something like that happens?
Well, again, I am a believer, in all seriousness, I am a believer in that you have got to commit to substantial, if you are under the premise of Anthony Richardson's first healthy NFL offseason, and he's making fundamental changes to whatever motion or footwork that he has had, then doesn't he need a lot of consistent team reps to try and implement that to where it's not robotic, it's second nature to him? That's my thought process. And
that's your hope too, right?
Well, that's not their hope. Their hope is that they have this competition that's split every other day.
I still, as much as they double down on it, as much as they talk about that publicly, I still think this is all designed to help push him to a different level. I still think that unless...
Do 50% of the reps push him to a different level?
I think if they go 50-50 and kind of see what they have in OTAs, that doesn't bother me as much.
But about training camp?
By the time you get to camp, I want a guy that you're going to roll with to get as many reps as possible. Daniel Jones has 1 million reps. Now, maybe not in this offense, but he's got a bunch of reps. How many games did you say he's played now? 70?
70 starts.
70 starts. That's a lot of reps. Anthony Richardson, at this point in the development of his career, is going to need more reps wherever he is. And he happens to still be the quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts along with Daniel Jones. If Daniel Jones is your starter in the first 3 to 4 weeks of this season coming up, that's it for Richardson, isn't it?
Yeah.
After last year?
Yeah, whether the Colts want to say it or not. I just think this is one of the more confusing aspects of it all.
They just
because
have so much invested
I can easily
in
hear people on the other side say, well, Richardson hasn't earned the right to have 100% of the reps. And people are not wrong in that general thought. Again, my thinking comes back to I don't see either quarterback getting tangibly better when you give them the amount of reps that you're planning to give them. I think you have to commit to one of them, hope, pray, get out the rosary beads, that one of them makes some substantial improvements, and that's the quarterback that you roll with. I think if you go with the half-ass attempt, you try to potty train for one day, you're going to be potty training again the very next weekend, and the very next weekend after that. You have to commit to it. You have to say, hey, we're going to live with, a little puddle here, maybe a little log or two here.
You're making this very messy for me.
I know. I apologize. It's probably way too graphic at 7:35 in the morning, but nonetheless, that's what I thought. And I'm curious when James will be back tomorrow. I'm curious to talk with James. Did he get a read of this is something that will continue throughout training camp, or is it to your point
talk
where
to Stephen Holder in a little while?
They're going to get through the spring? Yeah, Stephen Holder going to join us coming up at 8:00.
Yesterday, you had the chance to talk to Rick Carlisle. KB does that every Tuesday, and you were talking a minute ago about one of the things that kind of struck you, especially as you've thought about this now for the last 23 hours, were some of his comments on resting players, key players such as Pascal Siakam, correct?
Yeah, the Siakam thought, again, if you look at Siakam's numbers, Corbin, if you cue up that clip, the Siakam numbers here recently have just not been anywhere near to what you are used to. For those that missed the game on Monday night and maybe only caught a highlight, you're going to see great Siakam defense on the second to last possession of the game and a huge three to ice it. Gets lost in a little bit of a 4 for 15 night. Again, we're not used to that whatsoever out of him. And so now with the Pacers having clinched last night, seemingly they could be, when we're talking this time next week, I want to say the Pacers will still have 4 games left. I think they have a back-to-back Wednesday, maybe it's just 3 games. They have a back-to-back late next week, and then their final game's on a Sunday. They might have already wrapped up home court, particularly that 4 seed. So is there any thought to resting some guys down the stretch? So I posed this question to Rick Carlisle, and I think I set it up just in general of, has he seen some fatigue out of Pascal Siakam here lately?
Well, I think this time of year, right now, you're looking to keep minutes reasonable. Like the two previous games, he played in the mid-20s in Washington, and it didn't go well in Oklahoma. So I don't think anybody got over 30. That helps a little bit. If you're asking, would I love to get him a game off? I would love to. I just don't see where we can afford to do that right this particular moment. But days like today are really important for him, and that that he gets his appropriate amount of work in, but doesn't overdo it.
That's kind of where we're at this point in the season for probably 1 or 2 players on every team in the league, don't you think?
Rick obviously he's a coach, so, he's going to want his guys out there. He's obviously going to want as full of a roster as possible. You are a 14-point favorite tonight against the LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller-less Hornets. You're going to face Utah on Friday. How many points did you score against the Wizards last time out?
167, something like that.
162.
162.
You've got the Wizards next Tuesday. Cleveland, I assume, will be resting. I think you can find a time. I get that Rick is all in on trying to get the home court, and I get that. Probably until you secure that home court, you want to continue to play your guys. But it seems like it could do Siakam some good to get a game or 2 off his feet here in the final 2 weeks. Again, they'll have a back-to-back Thursday, Friday is the back-to-back next week. Maybe that's when you slide it in. But, that's a storyline that I have here over the final 6 or 7 games of Siakam has not been his normal self over the last 2 weeks. I don't think it's incredibly alarming. Once you get in the playoffs, you've got a lot of rest. You play every 2 and 3 nights. You don't have back-to-backs.
Especially the first round, they drag that out forever.
Right. There's 4 different series in each conference going on, and You got multiple 2-3 games a night. So I'm not like uber worried about it, but Siakam's just so damn consistent as 22 points on highly efficient shooting that when he doesn't have, or he has a string of those nights that aren't there, it does get my attention.
Yeah. Looking forward to seeing how that goes in the next couple of nights because they can just start ticking on. Look, I don't want to make it sound easy, and players can't look at it this way, but especially these 2 games here. You've got, Kevin, is it too much to say they have got to win these home games against lesser teams in the NBA? Have to.
Yeah, I mean, it's a secure home court. Now, granted, we are used to the Pacers a bit playing to their competition. The Charlotte Hornets, the Pacers are favored by 14 tonight. That is the most they've been favored by in a game all season. And the Charlotte Hornets are going for a season sweep of the Pacers.
What's the over-under on this game? Do you have it in front of you?
Oh, it's got to be.
I'm just curious. Because both of these teams have a tendency to give up and score a lot of points.
Are the Hornets still scoring without all their guys?
Not so much anymore, but my point being is you can lay some numbers down on those.
Yeah,
guys.
224.5, so that's not too high. Tonight you've got a 231 in the NBA, 237 in the NBA. You got a 230 in the NBA, so not that high. But, I can easily hear people on the other side that are saying, hey, earlier in the year, the Pacers were favored by 6 in a game against the Hornets and lost by 20. And they were favored by, I think it was like 10 or 11 in the other game against the Hornets and lost that. So it's a little Jacksonville Jaguars-ish when you think about the Colts history with that.
It's the Fan Morning Show. Kevin Bowen, Jeff Rickard. Corbin is in today from Mark, who is on his 14th vacation since last Christmas. Is that kind of how that works?
I was going to say 140.
No, those are the days. That's what it was.
By the way, it sounds like Jeff mentioned a little inclement weather possibly later today. Sounds like some of that may be happening right now in the north side of our listening audience here, kind of Boone, Hamilton County. So for those up there waking up, you might be encountering a little bit of wind action and some storms.
Different kind of alarm this morning, KB.
Yes, different kind of alarm, indeed.
We talked, too, about the NFL owners' meetings. Owners approving the expansion of replay assist. Kevin, here are the specifics on it. 5 new penalties can now be overturned by the booth. Remember, they can't make the call from the booth, but they could overturn a call that has been made. And these are hitting a defenseless player. So if a guy gets called for hitting a defenseless player and maybe it wasn't so bad and it's obvious on replay, they can go back and they can pick that flag up. The face mask we talked about, horse collar tackle, tripping and roughing or running into the kicker, which seems like a pretty easy one to figure out. We see all those times where a kicker will get brushed, Kevin, and he falls down as if he's just been hit by a slingshot in the back of the head. You've seen those plays?
Oh, yeah.
And they're probably not doing their job if they don't try to sell it, right?
Certainly.
So they say one notable aspect of this proposal is that replay assist will not call penalties that were not flagged on the field. For instance, if an obvious face mask is missed on the field, replay assist can't go back, tell the referee to throw the penalty, but again, they can tell them to pick that flag up.
I was good with replay assist last season. I would ask for just a little bit more transparency when it happens. I felt like in stadium and on TV, both, they didn't do a good enough job of alerting the audience what was
going
happening.
on.
Like
right.
all of a sudden the ball's like moved. I'm like, it's like a 3rd grade CYO game where the parents are looking the other way and some parent just all of a sudden moves the ball 2 yards. Like,
hey, what's that over there?
Right. Like, well, what it sounds like a St. Pius Our Lady of Mount Carmel game. Like, what's like going on here when it can you explain a little bit? And I get you don't want stoppages in play and
right.
you don't need who's the crazy NBA official? Is it Bill Kennedy? Who's the one that like gets in front of the mic and it looks like he's a Hollywood actor as he describes what's happening.
Good for TV.
Well, yeah, but it creates longer stoppages. So I would probably ask for that just a little bit from the NFL of, hey, come on the mic and replay assist is said 2nd and 8 becomes whatever 2nd and 6 or something along those lines.
You like throwback jerseys?
Oh, I love throwback jerseys.
So every team can now, last year they were able to declare 3 games, the games in which they would wear throwback jerseys. You get 4 now if you want the alternative jerseys. How about that?
An additional game.
Yeah. So
hey, more powder blue for the Chargers, more creamsicles for the Bucks. Yeah. I'm all in. You know my favorite throwbacks. What your Broncos rock.
You don't have to twist my arm. I love that orange.
You've got that helmet up in your office that I love.
Yeah, but I've also loved, like I'm old school too. I love that the Colts are so traditional. I love that they have slight tweaks and changes when they do their throwbacks. But I love the fact that the Colts are the Colts, man. I kind of dig that.
They got the the Indiana Knights. Have we seen those here lately? Are you a fan of those? The black jerseys?
I like the more traditional, but they're whatever.
We might need to wait for Mark Dykton, but can I throw a little betting question at you guys?
Absolutely.
All right, I am currently, obviously we have the Final Four coming up this weekend. We've got Auburn and Florida the first game, and then Houston and Duke the second game. I am currently, and I don't want to act like my bracket's been very good because it hasn't, but I am sitting on a healthy return on a Houston-Auburn championship matchup.
How healthy?
Healthy.
3 zeros, 4, 5, 6
Well, I mean,
zeros?
I'd be happy to pay for lunch one day. Let's just say that.
I just want to make sure you weren't like betting the mortgage and stuff
No,
like that.
well,
Okay.
maybe for the Masters coming up
All right.
next week. Okay, so Houston-Auburn, that's what I need. Should I hedge? Should I ride it out, or should I hedge?
How much do you believe in it?
That's where I'm a little nerve-wracking.
You got a couple
Florida's
of days.
a slight favorite, right? Like a 2-point favorite, and then Duke's like a 4-point favorite.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess if I said to you right now, the
If it
national
were
title
me,
game will be
I'd
what?
hedge.
What do you think the national title game will be? If I ask you that,
I think Duke plays.
okay. And then who wins the other game? Auburn or Florida?
Probably. It's tough to beat a team continuously, but I think Florida's just better than Auburn. Although,
So you don't like either of my teams, is what you're saying?
no, because I picked Auburn. I'm only going to be able to get up to 5th. I picked Auburn really going against my instincts of Duke. I picked Auburn anyway, and because I thought maybe it would be more counter to a lot of people. It turns out a lot of people took Auburn. I think Duke is going to win the national championship, Kev.
Does Duke have enough ball handling? Am I trying to look for something
If they need to, Cooper Flagg can play point guard. He can do everything.
against this Houston defense?
Yeah, I think they'll be okay. They're solid. What Duke is they give you 7, 8 guys that are all just as good as the guys that are on your
They've
floor.
got great talent. There's no denying that. But
They
true
play-
point guard
They play
against
defense
Houston.
just like Houston too. Here's what they do well. They move the ball and pass very well.
Right. But again, this is a different animal.
Yeah.
And I think what you've seen, I mean, look at Houston's last couple of matchups. Ryan Nembhard, a great point guard, struggled. Braden Smith, outstanding, and yet Purdue scored, 60 points in the game? And that's a top 10 offense in college basketball. And then, you obviously look at the Elite Eight. I mean, they made Ziegler look like he couldn't play at all. I mean, that's a great point guard as well. Duke, elite offense. No denying that whatsoever.
The defense is not bad either.
But this ain't the ACC. This is a legit defense here in Houston. And, it's probably nitpicking Duke. And I'm probably looking for something.
Sounds to me like you've made up your mind
to
here.
feel more. Well, I mean, I've got the bet. I can't get away from it unless I'm going to seriously hedge it. But I do. That is a curiosity that I have of like, okay, without your traditional kind of quarterback, if you will, type point guard. Proctor is more of a shooter. James is more of an off guard. They really don't have that guy. I am interested in that. So
it'll be fun.
You're saying I should hedge?
I chose Auburn because I was playing counter a little bit, but I also, as the tournament's gone on, I think Duke is the best team in this field.
Auburn has played all 3 teams here already in the Final Four. They're the first team to have done that in a Final Four in 11 years. So Auburn is certainly battle-tested. I feel like it's also rare to have this many All-Americans in the Final Four.
Oh, they're just loaded. But so much of this is now because not too many teams keep guys a ton of time. This tournament is just loaded with freshmen and sophomores. Get a few juniors in there, the occasional senior, but it's all freshmen and sophomores.
Yeah,
these
it's
days.
Cooper Flagg, and then, you do have a couple portal guys in Janiah Broome and Walter Clayton Jr., but, to have 3 first-team All-Americans, and I guess L.J. Cryer you would put, pretty high on that list as well. I feel like in most years we don't get that. I don't know, I could be wrong on that, but I feel like in most years we don't get you've been the best players in college basketball this season, and you carry your team to the Final Four.
It doesn't happen a lot because what happens, you start, as you get deeper into the tournament, you're playing teams, as you suggest, that are really good on both sides of the basketball. And maybe you play that elite defense here or there, and just the talent level and the team level continues to increase the deeper and deeper you go. It gets harder and harder, especially when you got a great defense. And that's the one thing I will say to your argument. If Houston brings their best defense and they can slow down Flagg and Knipple and they cause problems in the backcourt bringing the ball up, then I think they got a real chance to win. I don't know that they can do that, though.
Okay, so Miko's reached out here. I appreciate this. I think I'm following. He says hedge 15 to 20% of your potential return on the first game. So that would be Florida. I'd take Florida to beat Auburn. He adds, and he throws his numbers in here. He needs Houston to beat, he needs Auburn to beat Houston in the championship game. That would win him 700 plus. So he's going to place 150 on the Gators money line only on Saturday. Okay.
Sounds like he's done this once or twice before.
It sounds like a veteran here. We're not dealing with an amateur by any means here.
Didn't you used to work with an organization where you could buy your bet back?
Yeah, I did. Currently with ESPN Bet right now. But yes,
right.
Prop Swap was the old.
Remember Prop Swap? Does that even exist anymore?
Yeah, it does.
Maybe you could take your deal to Prop Swap.
Yeah, I know. I feel like I think I need the hard ticket if I remember correctly. With
it's the Fan Morning Show with Jeff Rickard, Kevin Bowen. James Boyd is off today, traveling back from the owners' meetings, the NFL owners' meetings in West Palm Beach. And while the on-the-court action was quiet last night, it was a nice night for the Indiana Pacers. They just continue to pile up wins on and off the court, Kevin. Don't even have to play, and they clinched a spot.
The Hawks lost last night to the Trailblazers, so the Pacers clinch a top 6 seed. Yeah, I mentioned it earlier, at 10 and 15, who knows how the season was going to unfold at that point. As great as last season was, the in-season tournament success, the Eastern Conference Finals trip, I think people forget it came down to game 82 for the Pacers to clinch a non-play-in spot last year. Mm-hmm. I think, actually beat the Hawks, if I'm not mistaken, that final game of the season inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse. So you will not have to sweat that part out. Now, again, getting a top 4 seed, you still have to a little bit here. But yes, the Pacers indeed clinch a top 6 spot with the Hawks losing last night. So they will be in the actual bracket. No sort of play-in action for the Pacers. And given the franchise's recent history outside of last season, I do think that is something that should be celebrated.
I was reading an article last night. I hadn't been paying much attention to a lot of things happening in the Western Conference right now. Clippers are playing scary good basketball right now, and Kawhi Leonard is healthy and seems to be on his game. They have moved up. They've won 8 of their last 10, KB. They're now in the 8th spot in the Western Conference, but that could be one of those teams you don't want to play in the first round.
Clippers Thunder round 1? Does that make you nervy if you're a Thunder fan?
I think you just have to, the players just have to focus in and remember that this is a really good basketball team led by a guy who has single-handedly carried teams to championships.
And then he gets hurt after game 1, and then you're good.
Well, he likes playing in the playoffs for the most part. But I just thought I'd throw that out there as you start to look at teams that are playing really well down the stretch. Boston, I mentioned them yesterday. They're 9 out of their last 10?
Yeah, and Cleveland, had that recent rut lately here. The Pacers will see Cleveland twice here to close out the season. I don't imagine the Cavs would be playing too many. For those that missed it last night in the NBA, Jokic threw up a stat line of 61 points, 11 and 10 for his triple-double. Steph Curry, 52, 10 and 8.
And the Nuggets lost. Can you imagine going 61, 11, and 10 and losing?
A wild finish. Russell Westbrook in the final 20 seconds of that one.
Crazy stuff. So the NBA is starting to head down the stretch. We're starting to pay attention to it. The 2 hottest teams right now, by the way, Oklahoma City's won 10 in a row. We saw them the other night. Just do whatever they wanted to do. And then the Celtics have won 9 in a row. You going to be shocked if that's your NBA Finals?
No. I betting money, I think, is still needs to be on the Celtics with how they're playing. Are you surprised at all that no Ryan Conwell to Indiana?
A little bit, but I can't get inside these guys' heads anymore, can you? I'm not sure what everybody's thinking and doing.
Again, Conwell, the Pike product, obviously started at South Florida, moved on to Indiana State. Xavier most recently entered the transfer portal. It sounded like Indiana fans were eager and hoping that he would be joining Darren DeVries down there. Obviously, playing time abundant. Certainly, NIL funds abundant. I can't imagine Louisville, has a bigger NIL. I don't know. Maybe Louisville does have a bigger NIL budget than Indiana there. But
that's
Ryan
probably
Conwell,
just what it comes down to, right? Not about which school you want to go to, but which one's going to pay you more.
Well, that obviously is probably the smart bet. I don't want to group everyone into the same sort of pool.
He's going to make money either way.
Certainly. And obviously, who would you bet on to have the better season, Louisville or Indiana? You'd bet on Louisville. I mean, they're
That's
actually
coming off this year, yeah.
right coming off this year.
2 years ago, I might have had a different answer for you.
They're bringing back a little bit compared to what Indiana currently has here. So, again, the portal will certainly start to take shape a lot more here in the month of April. We saw Purdue get the big man Oscar Clough yesterday from South Dakota State, and how things play out there in Bloomington for Darren DeVries getting some players around his son.
Well, we're going to look forward to seeing that. I've been checking the wires every day and just don't get a big, clear indication. And we don't know, as you said, what the full portal is going to look like.
Did we get confirmation? Was Hunter Dickinson, was that April Fool's?
That was, yeah, it was. I was setting something up. It was April Fool's, but it fooled a couple of folks online. Some people were just going off on rants.
Thank the Lord.
About getting a 7th year of eligibility, going into the transfer portal, all those kinds
Next
of
thing you're
things.
telling me is Jerry McNamara's got another year at Syracuse.
Hey, all I'm telling you is it sent me down about a 5-minute rabbit hole before I gave up. I couldn't find confirmation, or my thought was this has got to be an April Fool's joke, but then I fell asleep thinking, well, maybe not, because I couldn't find anything really refuting it. But
it had me nervous.
My thought was, hey, there's another big guy. Go get him. Go get him. But no, it was not to be. All right, coming back, we will talk a little bit about the Indianapolis Colts and where they I just want to know what Stephen Holder had to say, his translation of everything you heard from Nick Sirianni and Chris Ballard these last couple of days, and was it different from what we saw back at the Combine? We'll talk about it next here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. KB, some things you wish were April Fool's jokes. Some things were April Fool's jokes. We're on to April 2nd. I've gotten to the point as time goes on, I just don't even like April Fool's because somebody passes away like Val Kilmer. You're like, come on, that's got to be an April Fool's joke. Then you find out it's not. Then there are a few other things that you spend a minute running down and getting your hopes up, like Tiger Woods saying he was ready for the Masters coming off of Achilles surgery, which you were hopeful. You knew it wasn't real, but you were hopeful for about 2 minutes, right?
The day stinks. Let me be very clear. It stinks, and I'm glad it's over.
Yeah, good stuff with that. Meanwhile, on the real sports, I don't know if you call it a sport, but the NFL owners meeting down in West Palm Beach talking about their sport for the last couple of days. And it seems to be the one time of year, Kevin, where things actually get done, right? Things actually take place.
Some things.
I mean, they change rules. They do some things. They
some things tabled until May, it sounds like. But yeah.
I would imagine there would be some behind-the-scenes discussions about maybe player personnel moves and things like that, right?
Certainly.
Have that happen. Let's check it out and go down to West Palm Beach, Florida, where Stephen Holder has been covering this event. Does a great job covering the Colts, as we all know, and he joins us now on the Payless Liquors hotline. Good morning, Mr. Holder. How are we doing today?
Doing good. Yeah, the weather sucks, so yeah. It's just,
It's so bad for you, I'm sure. What did we find out? Did you learn anything the last couple of days about the Colts?
Yeah, I mean, I would say a couple of things. Look, with the quarterback competition or whatever situation, whatever you want to call it. I mean, one of the things that I asked both Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard was, look, what shape will this take? And I mean, maybe this is kind of an obvious question, but I mean, you want to get them on the record about whether this is truly going to be, just a 50-50 situation. Are there any other, variables or what have you, right? I mean, I think I went into this thinking, okay, is this truly going to be a competition, or do they want someone to just push Anthony Richardson? Look, when they paid Daniel Jones $14 million, I think that made it pretty real, right? But still, you still wanted to kind of get their sense of that. And they were very clear. This is wide open, and the best guy's going to play. And so that's where they're at. And one of the questions that I put to Chris Ballard was, I just laid it out to him. I said, look, if Anthony Richardson doesn't win this thing, and what that means he did not perform, and that means that Daniel Jones is your quarterback this year. The likeliest outcome is that he's not your future. So I said, if Anthony Richardson doesn't win this, and you get to the end of 2025, you have no quarterback. I said, where are you at that point? And I said, what's the goal at that point? And he said, well, look, the bottom line is the goal is to win games, period, and then we'll figure out the rest of it later. But that's like this freight train coming down the pike that no one wants to even talk about that, but that's a reality. That's a potential outcome here. So anyway, that was one of the things that I sort of threw out there, and he didn't have a great answer for it, unfortunately.
Stephen, when I think of the owners' meetings, I believe you were with us. Were you with us when we went on that boat? And I think it was Usher's old boat, or either it was named Usher. I kind of forget.
I was. We're not at that same hotel this time, so there's no marina here. But it is literally 2 feet from the ocean, so it doesn't suck either.
Yeah, and that wasn't a boat. I should reiterate, that was a yacht. You could have stayed in the penthouse of the resort, or let's just get a yacht.
Did they make you check your cell phone in when you got on that thing?
We had to take our shoes off. I remember that, and I remember I almost ran into the automatic glass sliding door. I was like, oh my gosh, I might as well just jump in the water.
Yeah, it was like some kind of Emirati, royalty owned this thing. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, it was definitely something that I did not deserve to be on by any means.
But it wasn't like Vikings party boat, right?
No, I don't think it was that. Well,
I'm just curious if you guys had to check.
Maybe
your
when the
phones
sun went down, potentially, but certainly not when we were on it. Stephen Holder live from Florida.
One quick thing on the yacht that I just have to share. I tell everybody this. When we were on there, this is Jim Irsay's, I guess, rented yacht for the week or something, is what Kevin's talking about. Do you remember, Kevin, they had a executive-sized dinner table with 15 seats that they were setting up for a team dinner back there. I was like, yeah, we're not invited.
Yeah, I just remember Wells's just schoolgirl laugh at every corner that we turned on that yacht of all the things that we were seeing. And again, I was like, just keep your hands to yourself. Do not touch anything. Let's all behave. here on this boat, or again on this yacht. Stephen Holder live from Florida with us here, Payless Liquors Hotline. One more from me on the quarterback competition front, Stephen, and it's probably an unfair question on April 2nd, but would you guess this is a starting job that gets decided before training camp starts, after the first preseason game, or after the third preseason game?
I bet it goes on a little bit, because I just don't think the odds. I don't have any. We're not basing this answer on anything other than just my prediction. But I mean, the way I foresee this is that I don't know that one guy, at least I don't anticipate one guy really separating himself so much that it's going to be crystal clear early on. I mean, look, when Anthony was a rookie in 2023, they made this decision after one preseason game.
Right.
But they also wanted to play him, right? They clearly did. And that's why it goes back to my question about, hey, how are you actually going to conduct yourself here? Is this going to be a real competition? Because they could have played Gardner Minshew. They clearly wanted to play Anthony, right? So this is not going to be that type of setup, they say. And that's number one. Number two, again, you have two guys who are working through some things. Are they going to is one of them immediately going to come out there and just clearly make this an easy decision? I don't know that that's true. And I think the other thing is, I think you have to let this play out. You really do, particularly because it's going to be, one day one guy gets the reps, the next day the next guy gets the reps. In the preseason, the way it's set up now with 3 games, does one guy start the first game, the next guy start the next game, and then what do you do week 3? I don't know. I think it's going to take some time. They're going to have to let this play out, and unfortunately for us, we're going to have to sit there and try to weed through what's happening and parse through everything from day to day.
Stephen Holder, ESPN.com, covers the Colts, joins us frequently here on the Fan Morning Show, 93.5, 107.5, The Fan, and all of The Fan. Chris Ballard talking about trying to get playmakers on offense, right? Are we locked into maybe a tight end at 14, or is there another way to go there?
Hey, look, I tried to nail him down. I will tell you. I will say they didn't dodge it. They did not dodge that. And so when it came to Chris Ballard, I asked him about the tight end position, and I said, man, come on, what's up, man? And he said, look, I like some of the guys we got, but he admitted, he says, we need a dynamic guy there. And I was happy to hear it. I mean, it's also duh. But yeah, so often they sort of, hide from these facts. And it was nice to hear him say it. And so that was good. And then when it came to Shane Steichen, my question to him was, look, are you okay with just like having this sort of tight ends, or do you actually, or can the tight end actually be a big part of your offense? I said, look, in Philly, when he was there, I said, you guys utilize tight ends to the fullest, and I said, can you replicate that here? And he said, hey, if we have a dynamic playmaking guy, he's getting the football. There's no question about that. So I'm trying to sort of put together a case for why they might do that in round 1. And I do think there's a really legitimate case for that. So we'll see. It also will boil down to availability. Is the guy they like there and on the board, and just, what are the other options and so forth. But I do think that position truly is in play.
Probably the last thing Stephen Holder wants to be doing in Florida, spending his morning with us, so we do appreciate his time. We won't keep him much longer. All right, let's take tight end off the board. 3 weeks from tomorrow, round 1 of the draft. If you said they don't take tight end at 14, what position would you bet on kind of second on that list in round 1?
Well, I think it's defensive line, just because Chris Ballard. I just think that's his nature. He hasn't addressed the trenches really at all in free agency, and I guess the one backup defensive tackle. They did do that, but
you more end or you more tackle with that defensive line thought, or just wherever? It's a
good question. I've gone back and forth on that, but I think maybe edge. I think just because of the long-term situation there, what is Samson Ebukham's future? Quid he pay 5th year? Just those kinds of questions that they're facing. I think the long-term there is a little less certain on the edge. I mean, also in the middle, though, you've got age working against you. So
a couple 30-year-olds.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, it's really not a bold decision to say, hey, you need to do something about this defensive line. You got to think about the future. There's also the reality that look, they got to win right now, or the future might not matter for these guys. So it's an interesting question, but I still think his inclination is the trenches.
Stephen, thanks so much for stopping by. We appreciate that. Travel home safely, and try to stay away from the luxury lots.
Can I throw one more, Stephen?
Yeah, don't get in trouble.
Hey, absolutely. What you got?
Steven, sorry, I did want to get one Jim Irsay update, just to kind of map out what a normal Irsay offseason would look like. He certainly would talk at the owners' meetings. Typically, he talks Saturday of the draft, and then really probably the next time he would talk would be training camp. So he did not talk at the owners' meetings. Is the thought that the draft is still a possibility, or are we looking deeper into the offseason before we hear from him?
I think there's now, I don't know this, but this is me speculating just based on what I know about his health. I think there's a good chance he would be present for the draft.
Obviously, he doesn't need to travel. I mean, when he speaks to us, he usually speaks to us at the complex.
Exactly. So, I mean, he's well enough to sit in the draft room and be present. He can do that.
I thought he sounded great in the locker room after the season, honestly.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, it's not as though he hasn't been around, but I think, traveling and shuffling from, one meeting to the next maybe is a little bit taxing when you can't really get around well. So I do think, though, that is definitely within the realm of possibility. I hope he does show up, and I hope he talks, because I really think that fans, they have come to expect to hear from him. And he's able to contextualize these things that he does and the decisions that are made better than anyone, because he can just be honest about it. He doesn't have to worry about pleasing someone or saying the wrong thing and worried about his boss. He's the boss, right? So there's a reason that fans want to hear from owners, and it's because you tend to get just a really raw version of what's going on, because they don't have to serve anyone. So I hope that he does show up, and I hope we do hear from him.
Yeah, and I think when you're in the worst playoff drought your franchise has been in 30 years, I think it's important to address that head on and not just with a pen statement at the end of the season. Stephen, thank you so much, man. Safe travels back, and certainly enjoy the weather.
All right, talk soon, guys.
Stephen Holder right there, Payless Liquors hotline.
I got to ask you the other day, do you think we've entered into a different era with Jim Irsay where he's just taking a bigger step back and really isn't going to be out front all that much anymore?
It's a good question. I mean, I think a lot of the recent quietness from Irsay is strictly due to his physical state. Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. Now, again, I thought he sounded pretty good in that post-game locker room after the final game of the season.
That's why I wonder if he's made the conscious decision to just kind of step back a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know.
Publicly, at least publicly.
It's odd to me. I remember during COVID, he did several Zooms. So, in today's climate, you can do virtual stuff. It's not like you need to, like if Jim Irsay wanted to have a State of the Union on his football team, he could easily do that virtually. 5-10 years ago, it was more of a, hey, let's show up to a press conference setting. Like, that's not necessary. He doesn't have to go to Florida. He doesn't have to go to Palm Beach and speak. If he really wanted to give, honest, candid thoughts about his franchise, he could do that. So to your point, I think he's just choosing not to. I understand the lack of travel or not going to road games or, not able to go to the owners' meetings. I understand that. But I do think I think it's a disservice to your franchise when he hasn't spoken here in the last 3 months. Because, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, Jeff. We'll get to draft weekend. Let's say he talks draft weekend. You know how the draft works for 32 teams. It's the biggest hype weekend of the year in the NFL. Every team loves it. Every team's back.
It's a real drama because you have no idea what's going to happen next, because
Colts will take Tyler Warren at 14, and it's going to be like, oh my gosh, here they are. They haven't had a tight end like this since Dallas Clark, and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, that general hype will be there. I think when you are in a state that your franchise has been in, again, there's only 3 teams in the entire NFL on a longer playoff drought than you. I mean, think about that.
And think of those teams.
3 teams in the entire league in a currently longer playoff drought than you. I think you owe it to your fan base to speak more than just a pen letter at the end of the season. And again, I'm not asking him to, stand up in front of a podium at the complex. I get his physical state is not in a great position, and certainly I hope that his physical health can improve to where he can be at these events and get back to, whatever, playing golf or playing with his grandkids, et cetera, et cetera.
So what are the top 3 questions you would ask him if he was sitting here today between us?
Well,
what do you want to know?
Why is Chris Ballard getting a 9th year? I mean, that's obvious. So I would start there. And, Ballard kind of answered that, I guess,
I was
going to
say, didn't they kind of have an agreement that we're going to ride this
But we've never heard that
out?
from Irsay. We've never heard that from Irsay. All we've heard from Irsay is blue chip GM. That's what we've heard. I would start there. Certainly the Anthony Richardson question. When you think about quarterback play with this franchise and its history, it's held to an incredibly high standard. Has Richardson lived up to it? Has he not lived up to it? Clearly, you would indicate he has not lived up to it. And then probably lastly, does he have Ballard and Steichen tied at the hip?
That's the question. To me, that's the number one question, because to me,
I think Ballard getting a 9th year is still a question.
Yes, but he's publicly going to back his guy. I mean,
but you can be honest about it. I mean, I thought Ballard's answer was honest at the combine. I thought Ballard gave a very candid answer of, we kind of agreed 3 years ago that, and again, that's something we've never heard from Irsay, that when they fired Frank Reich. By the way, I do want to get to that Andrew Luck. I had PTSD. I thought it was April Fool's yesterday. I guess it was. I had PTSD when I saw Andrew Luck and Frank Reich sitting next to each other at a press conference. Started immediately sweating.
Someone said, could you imagine someone going into a coma 7 years ago and they wake up and they see that picture the first thing out of opening their eyes?
Watching that.
Right.
But again, we've never heard that from Irsay, but Ballard did share that at the combine of hey, we agreed when we fired Frank that we were start over is not probably the phrase that Chris used, but I'm paraphrasing that this is going to take some time, and you draft Richardson and you hire a first-time head coach. So those would be the 3. Why a 9th? Richardson and that standard, and then lastly Ballard into a 9th year, Steichen into a 3rd year. Do you tie them at the hip? And do you tie them at the hip with Anthony Richardson?
That was going to be my follow-up, too. Are all 3 of them tied together at this point in time? Because it kind of feels that way, doesn't it?
Well, I guess.
I mean, we've Ballard basically told us if it doesn't work out with Richardson, that's going to be the end of that. That's what it feels like.
Right, but, I mean, Ballard's resume would get you fired 9 times out of 10 around the NFL, and it hasn't gotten him fired yet. So that's where I'm a bit confused by it all.
All right, let's check everything down and let you know what's happening right here, right now in the world of sports. Kevin, the Pacers didn't even play last night, and they won.
Clinch. The Pacers clinched last night. The Hawks losing to the Trailblazers. So the Indiana Pacers are guaranteed a top 6 seed for the second time in the last 2 years. Obviously still playing for home court. They are trending in a very positive direction for that. 7 games to go, but they will be out of the play-in. They are in the actual bracket. And I think given where this franchise has been over the last, not last season, but, probably the last handful of years before that, I do think that's an accomplishment. And, Jeff, I forget at times, this team was 10-15 at one point this year. I mean, 10-15 doesn't mean that you're good to go on April 2nd, but yet the Pacers have found a way to be in that position. And the East certainly doesn't have as much depth as it has even last year. So last year it came down to game 82. This year, game 75, the Pacers know that they will be in the dance.
To your point, the Milwaukee Bucks beat the Phoenix Suns yesterday. They pulled within 3 games of the Pacers with that win. Detroit is in 5th, though, just 2 games back of the Pacers. So game tonight at home against the Charlotte Hornets. Friday night at home against the Utah Jazz. This team can go a long way towards locking up home court advantage in the next 6 days or so.
It's the old nemesis, the Charlotte Hornets, inside of the building tonight. Some people might laugh at that. The Hornets are going for a season sweep of the Pacers. They have beat Indiana twice already. Vegas thinks otherwise. The Pacers are a 14-point favorite. That's the biggest they've been in all year. Now, granted, Indiana has played to their competition quite often. Granted, we did see last week them absolutely dismantle the Washington Wizards. So, no LaMelo Ball, no Brandon Miller. Who else? No Grant Williams. What else should we know about the Hornets? I know
Those
you've got
are the
a little
3 that are
history
gone
there.
for the year, but everybody else should be available for them tonight from what I saw in the game notes last night. Cleveland and Boston, by the way, just running away with the East. Cleveland is 60-15 already. Boston 56-19. So the Celtics are 4 games behind Cleveland in the Eastern Conference overall, and the next team, New York, is 12 games behind Cleveland. So it really has been a 2-team top of the conference kind of season in the East so far this year.
Speaking of the NBA, last night, stat lines for Jokic, 61, 11, and 10. Steph Curry, 52, 10, and 8. Absolutely insane numbers for those two first ballot Hall of Famers. Moving over to the college ranks. How about Buzz Williams to Maryland? Why do I feel like Maryland just upgraded from their head coaching situation?
They were happy to let the last guy go after the last month.
I think Buzz Williams is a better coach than Kevin Willard.
I do too. I think Maryland got a better into that team.
Buzz has mastered the game of he just moves on every 4 or 5 years. And I feel like the program's kind of like what he's done for him, and then he just kind of moves on.
And does his thing. Also, NIT last night over at Hinkle Fieldhouse. Number 1 seed UC Irvine, the Anteaters, all over Indianapolis. They beat the second-seeded North Texas team 69-67. Also in the other game, Chattanooga over Loyola Chicago, 80-73. So Chattanooga and the Anteaters in the NIT championship.
Mocs and Anteaters coming up tomorrow night from Hinkle. Speaking of Hinkle, Butler out in Vegas. They've got the Crown Tournament tonight at 7. Yes, Butler is the final team from the state of Indiana playing basketball here this college basketball season. Boise State, I think if they win, they get NIL money. I think they had to win 2 games, I believe, to get to that level. Boise State actually was close to making the tournament, so that is 7 o'clock tonight. That's probably about it on my end. I know locally.
You don't want to talk about the Reds?
Well, I was going to say college
Reds.
basketball is going to throw one more in there. I'll let you talk about the lowly Reds. Ryan Conwell, the Pike product, played at Indiana State, played most recently at Xavier. I know some Indiana fans were thinking that he would be off to Bloomington. Last night announced that he is committed to Pat Kelsey and the Louisville Cardinals there. So Darren DeVries still looking for his first portal edition, not named his son, right?
So far, that's what we're waiting on. In Major League Baseball, the Rangers beat the Reds. Great American Ballpark yesterday. 1-0 was the final score there.
Where are you going to go? I can hear Mark Dykton playing the audio right now.
Stop it.
Corbin, you don't have access to that, thankfully, right?
You'd have to look for it, I think.
The Cubs did win.
You'd have to look for it. No, there was a lot of interleague play yesterday. Did you notice that? They get that started off early.
I kind of forgot, interleague used to be a thing. I feel like now they, play it so often, it doesn't even register to me.
All right.
Are the A's even in a conference?
Are the A's still in Major League Baseball? I think they've been relegated to one of the lower English.
They play in the Indianapolis Indians?
Yes.
Opening night over Victory Field, unfortunately. 2 in the 9th for the Iowa Cubs. Indians lost 2-1. Mother Nature a little dicey for their homestand here the rest of the week.
All right, that's what's going on. Again, the Pacers and the Hornets later on tonight, 6:30 airtime here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Then Mark Boyle has the play-by-play just after 7 o'clock. Coming up in just a moment, we'll talk more about the National Football League owners' meetings and what you might see differently on the field moving forward here at 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Our morning log tribute to Val Kilmer continues, passing away at the age of 65. Yesterday, he had throat cancer, I think, several years ago. Pneumonia was listed as the cause of death. I thought he had bounced back from that a little bit, but I don't know. That's just got to – sometimes things cascade, right?
Right, they did didn't they do like a little AI replication of his voice for the most recent Top Gun?
Yeah.
Wasn't that right?
Yep. But that was cool. It was good. It was cool to see him.
Oh, certainly. No, we actually went to a movie theater to watch that.
I still think my favorite character might be Doc Holliday, though.
Yeah, I know a lot of people brought up, oh gosh, why is it escaping me right now? Well, Batman certainly, I think people put up there, and then Tombstone as well.
Yeah. Good stuff. We are going to miss his talents, no question about that. In the meantime, the world rolls on, and we were talking about April Fool's Day jokes yesterday. Tiger Woods, you mentioned this a minute ago. He's just Mr. Social Butterfly now, out and about. All kinds of things going on. April Fool's jokes, declaring his love publicly to people. This is not the Tiger you know and love, is it?
Yeah, Tiger can kiss my ass with that April Fool's joke yesterday. Yeah, I thought absolutely pathetic.
Smoking on that.
What Hunter Dickinson did to you, Tiger did to me, I guess is where we're at with that. I will say April Fool's yesterday, I thought I had PTSD, and all of a sudden watching this press conference out there at Stanford and seeing Andrew Luck and Frank Reich next to each other and both of them smiling, I'm thinking last time I saw these two at a press conference, I think Andrew was crying and Chris Ballard looked like someone had, ran over his dog, and Frank Reich, probably the most unhappy I've ever seen Frank Reich look. Andrew Luck said that when he called Frank Reich to ask him to be the interim coach at Stanford, Frank Reich was busy pushing the old cart around Costco.
That tracks. That tracks. Don't you think?
Yeah, it kind of fits the little Frank Reich personality.
He's look, one thing we know
about Frank. Is he a sampler at Costco?
He is a guy that is devoted to his beliefs. He's devoted to football, and he just kind of likes to hang out.
Frank was saying that him and Linda, his wife, had kind of come to the conclusion around the Super Bowl, after the Super Bowl, of like, all right, we're not just going to take a job just to take it. I don't think Frank is kind of at that point in his coaching career anymore. Very adamant, like right person, right place. Certainly the Carolina thing. In my opinion, I thought, from an ownership standpoint, that's where your issues fall in line with the Panthers. But I did think yesterday, listening to Andrew Luck, and let's play this clip, Corbin, was just a reminder of what Frank Reich meant to Andrew Luck. And it might be difficult for people to kind of understand because, Luck then retired the very next year after that. But, when Luck has talked about that 2018 season, he's talked about it as the most fun he's ever had playing football. So here was Andrew Luck yesterday at the Stanford press conference to announce Frank Reich as the interim head coach on what Frank has meant to him.
I came back to that 2018 season. It was coming off of a year missed to injury, and there was a part of me that wondered if I ever would play football again, if I'd ever find the joy, whatever that was, and I did. And I got to do it with Frank, Nick Sirianni, Marcus Brady, Jacoby Brissett. I mean, there's a cast of characters, if you will, from that year and a half of my life that hold deep meaning for me. And so deep that after that season, my wife and I just celebrated our 6th wedding anniversary yesterday, and celebrated is way too strong of a term because I definitely forgot it. And to be fair, she forgot it as well. Our brother-in-law reminded us, and she called, or it was 2 days ago, sorry, she called from the road. And I thought, Frank married us, right? We had our wedding somewhere else. We came back, we went to City Hall. And there was like way too much of a process in Indiana. I was like, I know someone I think who's like an ordained minister at some point in his life. Let's call Frank up. So Frank married Nicole and I, and working together. Again, I didn't know if I was going to play, but we Frank preached trusting a process and trusting getting better every day. I tried to embody that, and we did. I mean, we'd worked. I mean, I think I remember that training camp. Like, by the time the season had rolled around, I don't think I'd thrown a pass more than 40 yards, like in practice. I didn't know if I could, but we just kept trusting our process. We got to the point where eventually we had a pretty magical season, and did some really good things. And like Frank's a football coach and from a football family, and obviously has had this incredible career, an incredible coaching career. And like his team meetings, like in one of the first team meetings in Indianapolis, he brought up Emil Zatopek, right? Emil Zatopek was a Czechoslovakian runner and an Olympic runner. Like my wife's Czech, my wife's family from Czechoslovakia, escaped to the United States. Like I know who Emil Zatopek is. Like I'm going to buy that book after that team meeting. So it's stuff like that Frank, I think I connected to a lot of how the paradigm through which Frank saw the world, saw football. I felt like I grew more than I ever had as a quarterback, as a leader that year, through tough times and through good times, and that's part of why I had such. It's why he was the first call, honestly. When I started getting to all right, let's move forward, and it's what I know he can help our coaches and players sort of feel a lot of that as well.
A lot of information packed into that minute and a half there.
It was, I watched the entire presser, 20, 30 minutes. And I don't want to go down this rabbit hole on April 2nd at 8:36 in the morning, but I must say I was struck a couple different times in listening to Andrew Luck talk about Frank Reich and think, wow, and he's still retired after that season. Because remember, that was really his first, that was his first, obviously his return and his first real season playing with Frank. And then August of the next year, he retires. And, the Colts, they won a playoff game. That's the last time they won a playoff game, was that season, in Houston. And, Andrew had his most efficient season of his NFL career. And I guess it's probably two just brief thoughts on it. Again, you hear how much Frank Reich has meant to Andrew Luck on and off the football field. It adds to the surprise nature that I still have about the retirement. And then two, it's a reminder of just how much the pain and suffering he felt like he went through injury-wise, or did go through, I should say, how much that then attacked is kind of a strong word, but attacked his other relationships in life, or took away from his other relationships in life, i.e. being a husband, i.e. being a future father.
One of the things that was kind of hidden in there, too, was he talked about the fact that in that training camp, it was nice. He came out, talked about it, didn't know if he was going to be able to play again, but then he also said, didn't even throw a pass over 40 yards because I didn't know if I could do that either. Sure. I think that starts to hint at the physical toll the game had begun taking on him when you have a guy with as strong an arm as we saw with Andrew Luck, who's saying, I don't even know if I could throw it more than 40 yards. I didn't know if I was going to play again. It's clear that I think he was opening up front, like, I physically can't take this game anymore. It's just killing my body, which is leading to a poor mental state, which is leading to poor relationships around me.
And again, he had played every game the previous season and had played pretty much every snap that previous season, and yet the awkward, calf ostrignum, I forget what it was even called, when, all of that started to flare up and he had to go through another, albeit not strenuous rehab. It's not like he needed a surgery. That was enough for him. So it does seem like, for those that have kind of gotten past that, I don't know if our entire audience has, Frank Reich being the head football coach at Stanford just kind of makes sense. When I think of demeanors and I think of, personality fits at a collegiate program, I know there might not be the religious aspect necessarily that is super prevalent. Honestly, I don't think that's something that, Andrew and Frank, were whatever truly bonded over, but clearly they bonded over a whole lot more than that, and I think Frank Reich fitting at Stanford makes a lot of sense. And I'll see a Bill Belichick come November.
Yeah. What happens if they have a really decent season? What if they win 8 games, 7, 8 games?
I mean, Luck was adamant in that press conference. Yes, first off, he was adamant about a couple things. We need to win. I was struck by the amount of competitive spirit that was alive in Andrew Luck's words yesterday. He was like, I don't care. It's an interim situation. We need to get Stanford football back to being Stanford football. But they also, both parties, made it very clear that this is an interim thing. This is not, and again, sure, Jeff, play it out. What if they have a surprise season and Frank Reich loves it? Who knows? 64 years old, I want to say. Corbin, maybe double check me on that for Frank Reich. But they made it very clear, I say, and Luck specifically, as Stanford's GM, was pretty adamant that this is an interim thing. It is an awkward time to hire a coach.
Well, it's also, when they do bring in a new athletic director, he gets to make the call on whatever coach he wants to bring in, too.
But wasn't that Luck's call? Isn't that why he's the GM?
I think my sense was, in the absence of an athletic director at Stanford right now, he being the guy that is the general manager for football, I would think whoever the next AD comes in, sure, Andrew will have a voice, but at the end of the day, I think the athletic director, that's what I'm waiting to see. How's that
I
dynamic
think this is
play
Luck's
out?
baby. I think Luck makes that call.
We'll see.
I mean, he's the one
Interesting.
handling all this right now, and obviously the firing of Troy Taylor and everything. So
It'll be fun to watch it play out, and I hope nothing but the best. There's two guys that I like a lot. I really like both those men, and I hope things go well for them.
I hope it goes well until they play Notre Dame.
You're consistent, I'll give you that. All right, coming up in a minute, we will talk more about the NFL's rule changes. Took place yesterday. Also, the Pacers have clinched a playoff spot. Now, can they lock down the number 4 home court advantage in the first round in the Eastern Conference? We'll talk about that next on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Kevin, you're dangerous. You're just dangerous. Little confrontation there in the locker room between Mav and Iceman.
Corbin's been all over it today.
He
That
has.
might have been the last movie I saw in a theater here. Obviously, the most recent one we
The
saw
recent
at
Top Gun, right?
Right.
Yeah,
we saw it
yeah.
down here at what's that theater called? Right there by the garage.
Oh,
up
yeah.
there on the north side of Mass Ave.
Yeah, that's a cool place. I
Garage
like
is
that.
great, by the way. For anyone that hasn't been to that, got a little bit of variety from a food standpoint in there. Family
Entertainment?
friendly as well.
Entertainment.
They
yeah.
got some entertainment typically in there as well. So great spot.
It's a good spot. I think Family and I, it's one of the last movies that the whole family went to see together. The other when that came out, we went and saw that at the IMAX screen over there at Traders Point, I think.
Corbin was mentioning in the break some interesting trade proposals with the Colts and the draft. I definitely want to get to that here coming up in the 9 o'clock hour. A few of them. One I can kind of nod my head at. The other one, oh boy, I don't know if I'm nodding my head at that at all.
I can't wait to hear what that is. In the meantime, there was USA Today came out and ranked all the new college hires and what the top 10 were. Where do you think DeVries ranks in this?
Oh, college basketball hires. So who do we have? We got Buzz to Maryland. We've got Sean Miller to Texas.
Think guys like Will Wade, Ben McCollum, Sean Miller,
Wade.
Richard Pitino, Ryan Odom, Nico Medved from Minnesota. I'm no particular order. I'm naming these off. Alex Jensen went to Utah.
I'll say DeVries is, 3 on the list.
They put him ninth.
9th.
They said the longtime Creighton assistant went 150 and 55 over 6 seasons at Drake, taking the foundation poured by Medved to put together maybe the best stretch in program history. DeVries then spent this past season at West Virginia, which finished 19 and 13, was somewhat controversially left out of the tournament, they write. Will the pressure and expectations at Indiana be too much for a head coach with just 1 year of major conference experience? Maybe, but going with a lower profile hire might just be what the Hoosiers need as well. And I think a lot of it, in context, look at how things have gone for Curt Cignetti. And when got him, he had not had any big major power conference experience, and there he is playing in the national championship playoff.
Yeah, I'd strongly disagree with the Nico Medved had Drake on this unbelievable. I mean, Nico Medved was there for like 1 year, and they were. I don't even think they did much in that 1 year. So, that's where I do feel like the Darren DeVries, Archie Miller comps that you hear. Again, to me, that's incredibly lazy. That is a Dayton win. Everybody wins a Dayton. Everybody wins a Dayton. Brian Gregory won a Dayton. Going back before that, people won a Dayton. Anthony Grant's won a Dayton.
Well, it's not like you just walk in a place and you win. You got to do the job.
Nobody
won
wanted Drake.
Work.
Nobody's ever won a Drake.
Yeah.
And so that to me is what stands out. It was amazing. I think this might have been I don't know if it was in the Big Ten tournament or where I saw this graphic, but like there is a little bit of it just stuns me that people can't win in Indiana. Like they flashed up this graphic during the Big Ten tournament. It was like NCAA tournament appearances like in the last 10 years. I think Indiana had 3. And when you looked at it, Iowa had 5. I think like Maryland had 6. I mean, we're talking, Michigan State and Purdue, obviously the class of the conference had like 9. I mean, I think Northwestern had the same amount as Indiana. Can you imagine that? Like Northwestern basketball and their budget having the same amount as Indiana? And again, like even like an Iowa having 5. Like this is not where, in college football, whatever, Iowa benefits from being in the Big Ten West. It's like Indiana University basketball with 3 NCAA tournament appearances in the last 10 years. I mean, there's 68 teams that make this thing. And you only have 3 in the last 10 years.
It's almost hard to wrap your brain around.
Like they were so far down on the graphic. I want to say there were probably 7. I'm going to guess there were 7, maybe even 8 Big Ten teams above them. Like imagine saying to someone 10 years ago, because 10 years ago, Tom Crean had that program
right there
on very stable ground.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go back 10 years ago, I guess you had just made that Sweet 16 where you beat Kentucky in the second round or about to.
But the feeling was that was his ceiling, right?
Right,
for a lot of people.
like, okay, what I'm getting at is Tom Crean had the program on ground that, the dysfunction of Kelvin Sampson's end.
You're going to the tournament, you're going to Sweet 16s.
And if you would have told an IU fan at that point right now, hey, over the next 10 years, you're going to watch 7 or 8 Big Ten teams make the tournament. I mean, Purdue's made it 3 times the amount as Indiana. Michigan State's made it 3 times the amount as Indiana. I mean, it's just so stunning to me.
What are the expectations immediately for DeVries in the next 3 years, in the first 3 seasons? What are the expectations? What are realistically people going to want from this program?
Yeah, I think
First of all, it'd be nice to make the tournament all 3 years, right? That'd be good.
yeah, that'd be nice. I'll say you need to at least make the tournament 2 of the 3, and I think you need to be a second weekend team at some point. And then again, the Big Ten hierarchy of just I would say being a top 5 to 6 team in the Big Ten.
Have it be the middle of February and you're still playing for it. Right?
I do think I don't think he has to be portal hungry right now. I don't think it's going to be a program that will turn over its roster to the extent it's turned it over in the Mike Woodson era. I think you will see much more. I think you'll see a little bit more of a Purdue focus when it comes to recruiting. I think you'll try to see that. Last night you're watching the McDonald's All-American game, and there's Braylon Mullins and there's Jalen Harrelson. I mean, this state, yeah, they have those, but Jeff, you were on the call. Look at what Trey Singleton did in the state championship. You don't think he'd be a nice core player at Indiana?
Like I said,
for 3 to 4 years?
I was listening very closely to the post-game interview he did, and he didn't bring up Northwestern at all. I just thought that was interesting.
Did he decommit? Like, has there been an announcement?
No,
was that another April Fool's announcement?
No, he's not decommitted or anything like that.
Okay.
But when he was asked what was next, I thought he very thoughtfully avoided answering that collegiate question.
So I think there'll be a little bit more of an internal homegrown build. And obviously, when you have the NIL budget that they do, certainly you can still sprinkle in some portal additions. And obviously, you got teams here in the Final Four that have done that. But
you curious who they ranked as the top 3 hires in this offseason? Because I don't agree with them.
Where'd they go? Wade, McCollum?
They had Will Wade number 1, which I don't mind. He's got baggage, but the man can coach. And certainly at North Carolina State, they have expectations of getting to the tournament as well. Kevin Willard, they've had second to Villanova. And I think you and I were talking about this morning. I think Maryland's upgraded with Williams over Willard, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'd put Buzz Williams definitely ahead of Kevin Willard.
And then they had Sean Miller, number 3, going to Texas.
I do like Sean Miller at Texas.
Yeah, he's good. They had Buzz Williams 4, Ben McCollum 5. Those are your top 5 that they had in the USA Today, ranking the offseason hires. DeVries came in 9th, and they're just hoping to catch fire again like they did with Signetti and wake this sleeping giant of a basketball program up. Because I saw something the other day, something frivolous. I was going through TikTok, and there was somebody did a thing where have AI roast Big Ten schools. And so I looked up the Indiana one, and most of it was about thinking they're a basketball power, that the year is still 1998 or even before that.
Coming up 9 o'clock hour, we'll hit on some Colts and the trade proposals that could come in the draft. And let's go down memory lane. So much of when you see a name of John Shire in the Final Four, I think back to Duke and Butler in that national title game. Shire says he thinks about the Gordon Hayward shot. Maybe not that shot, though.
That's a surprising one, right?
We'll go down memory lane here coming up 9 o'clock hour.
I like this, but this would be more with Goose than it would be Iceman, wouldn't it? Just wondering here. But I like it. It's from Top Gun. I like where you're at today. Celebrating the life and the acting abilities and the roles of Val Kilmer, who tragically passed away yesterday at the age of 65. Unfortunately, that was not an April Fool's Day joke. A lot of them going around, a lot to sift through. Maybe my favorite in sports was the report that I was playing around with earlier that Hunter Dickinson was going to get a 7th year of eligibility and then go into the transfer portal.
Now, you were vetting another one during the break. You said, is this true?
I saw another one. I don't even want to bring it up because it just doesn't seem right to me, but I can't find a way to refute it. There was one yesterday that said Alabama star Mark Sears was going to go to Auburn, and I just can't buy that. I can't get there.
Are you going to share next that Braden Smith's going to Indiana?
I'm not even going to attempt something like that.
I feel like you've been duped here. The Mark Sears to Auburn can't
That's
be
why.
real.
That's why I'm not saying it. It doesn't feel. I can't imagine that would be real.
There's no mention of April 1st in these stories.
No. In fact, this was on Athlon Sports.
I feel like they usually put in like, hey, here's the holiday at the bottom, or have you looked at the calendar?
Athlon Sports. 3 years ago, the Alabama Crimson Tide added a point guard via the transfer portal that did not receive a single offer from a Power 5 basketball program. 111 games later, which includes 9 NCAA tournament victories and 3 Sweet 16 appearances, Mark Sears has been everything and more for head coach Nate Oates and Alabama. So I don't know. I don't know what to say. I can't find anything that backs that up. So I'm going with, for the time being, no. Can't imagine you go from Alabama to Auburn. That's got to be April Fool's, right?
How about the dude yesterday, Michie Johnson, Ohio State
Yes.
to South Carolina, back to Ohio State, back to South Carolina. When are we going to get the player that goes from Indiana Purdue to Indiana to Purdue?
I'm glad you brought that one up.
Can we get one of those? I think I might actually respect the person to have the what to do that. Talk about how much the rivalry means.
Just keep
to
going
him.
back and forth. Depends on he's going back and forth to visit friends, and the last place he is
It
like,
sounds like a hell of a
I'm going to
time.
be here now.
Yeah, Boiler Gold Rush in August, and now we're gonna get Little 500 here coming up. Be down there for quals.
Could you imagine nobody tried to go Braden Smith transferring to go play for Indiana yesterday?
Well, I'm nervous. If you bring up one more, so far you've had 2 of them, Dickinson and now Sears.
And I don't believe either one. My point is I went down
I'm
the
nervous for
rabbit
the
hole.
trifecta.
I've gone down the rabbit hole to try and verify them, but I don't know that I can verify them or not. So until proven otherwise, they're not.
I thought this, and we'll get to the East Colts and the trade proposals here in just a second, but I did find this John Shire clip pretty interesting. Corbin, if you cue this up, John Shire was on with Dan Patrick earlier in the week, and I think most of our audience remembers, but Shire was one of the more prominent Duke players on that national title game here at Lucas Oil Stadium against Butler back in 2010. And I found it interesting when Dan Patrick asked him about that game and, of course, the Gordon Hayward half-court heave. Shire went to the possession prior, and this is what Gordon Hayward has always said. Gordon Hayward always goes to the possession prior of really kind of a bread and butter Hayward look that would have given Butler the lead. So I guess just to set it up before we play it. Again, Butler was down 5 with about 2 minutes to go. They got a couple Matt Howard layups to cut it to 1. And then Hayward got a baseline look, which, for a lot of guys, that might not be a great shot. But for Hayward, that was kind of his bread and butter back there at Butler. But here's John Shire earlier this week on that Butler game.
I was ahead on the play that he got so I think people always think about the last half-court shot, which is right there. The one before that he had, we were out of bounds. We were up by 1, and he had an isolation play at the top of the key. And he ended up shooting about like a 15-footer from the baseline. I thought it was going in, Dan. I was right under the basket. Hit just probably, if it's an inch shorter, it goes in. It goes long. So that shot to me was the one that scared me. I was already thinking about the how we were going to win with the timeout or what we were going to do. But the half-court shot was something I'll never forget. I felt it was off for the last second. I was ahead on the play, but thank God he missed it.
I think you go back and look at that, and it's interesting because I don't think you can go too hard on yourself for missing the half-court shot, right? Because it was close there. But when you have that jumper that you think is in your wheelhouse, and something you make in practice every day, all day long.
Yeah, I remember
That's
it
the
being
one
like
that's
a
gonna
little
bother
kind
you.
of fadeaway baseline jumper.
Yeah.
And again, that was kind of Hayward's bread and butter. And, that would have given Butler the lead.
Mhm.
And now you aren't playing the foul game where was it Zubek, I think, was at the free throw line. And you don't have the half-court heave there. So it's kind of funny how Shire thinks back to that. I was fortunate to be in the building that night. We were sitting up in like one of the section 400, and we had a great angle. Our seats just happened to be right behind where Hayward took that shot from. And Shire's right. I mean, it was dead on. I mean, as much as the half-court shot, of course, almost went in, that was dead on. So to hear Shire kind of go down memory lane with that was interesting. How about Carlisle? Carlisle told us that they thought about hiring Bruce Pearl as their G League coach. Was that right?
At one point.
Is that what he was saying to us yesterday? I thought there might have been a Kelvin Sampson overlap with Sampson's history in the NBA. Yeah, I don't know how much people remember this, but Sampson's first job after Indiana was San Antonio. Popovich.
Mhm.
Popovich called him, and now here he is in the Final Four in San Antonio. He mentioned that play that Houston ran to beat Purdue there at the end on Friday night, that was a Scott Skiles drawn up play.
Wow.
Back when he was with the Bucks for a man that I always thought had great hair. Do you remember Luke Ridnour?
Oh, yeah, from Oregon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a play they used to draw up for Luke Ridnour. He said that was the play that they drew up for L.J. Cryer there. So a little bit of NBA overlap, of course, with Sampson.
Whatever happened to this guy, Skiles? He's kind of disappeared.
That's a good question. I don't know where he's at.
I have to look that up.
When's the last time he coached?
That's what I mean. It's been a while. It's probably been a decade, hadn't it?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Man, we'll check that out.
But yeah, they mentioned
I love
that Bruce Pearl was thought to be a hire of whatever the Dallas Mavericks G League team was. This was after the Tennessee situation there. So, Carlisle said he had a great convo with him, great energy, exactly what you would expect there.
And when you look back at what Bruce Pearl got in trouble for at Tennessee, and you think about today's world of NIL.
Was it just the
and
cookout? Was that it?
From what I understand, it was always about the fact that the NCAA felt that they were lied to by him on several occasions about what took place. It wasn't just that he had brought a recruit or two home for meals when he wasn't supposed to at some point in time, but that he would completely deny it and lie about. That was the story that I got from people that I knew at the NCAA.
Yeah, it was a very short stint for Sampson with Popovich in San Antonio. Then he went to Milwaukee after that, and actually was Houston. And I think we talked a little bit about this earlier in the week, and I guess it kind of goes back to Darren DeVries with Drake. I mean, Jeff, when I brought up to you, hey, what do you think about Houston basketball, like the history of their college program? You immediately went to Guy Lewis, understandably.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously what they did there in the early 80s speaks for itself. They hadn't won a tournament game in 29 years prior to Sampson's arrival.
Yeah.
I mean, it literally went from Guy Lewis and the Drexel Akeem to falling off a cliff. And then Sampson takes that over, and, the rest is history. I mean, Houston has been, I guess, much as it pains probably Indiana fans in this state to say, they've been the class of college basketball over the last handful of years.
And again, the way it worked out in Indiana, nobody's ever going to be happy with that. I'm never happy with that. But the one thing we know about Kelvin Sampson is the man can coach. John Calipari, like him or not, the man can coach. Rick Pitino, whether you like him or not, all the things that went on at Louisville and all the nonsense and off-the-court stuff that was going on there, there are guys that just win basketball games in college basketball, and those three are amongst the best. I mean, you talked about the little engine that could, 10-seed, poor little 10-seed Calipari's team.
Our Cinderellas this year are John Calipari and Gino Auriemma. Those are our Cinderellas in this March Madness.
And Gino may have the best player left standing at this point in time, too.
That is certainly true. All right, Corbin, you alerted us of this yesterday, and this was some Bill Barnwell from ESPN mock draft trade proposals and a couple involving the Colts, correct?
That is right.
Now, the one that intrigued you was the Anthony Richardson-related one with the Steelers?
Yes, it was.
Okay, so for our audience that might have missed this, will you provide the details of this trade? And again, this is Bill Barnwell queuing up potential draft day trades for NFL teams.
Yeah, Kevin, if I'm Omar Khan of the Steelers and I call you, Chris Ballard of the Indianapolis Colts, I say, hey, man, I know that Anthony's not really working out there in your organization. Here's what I'm willing to give you for him. I'll give you the 21st pick in this year's draft and a conditional 2027 seventh rounder. Condition be like if he plays 60-70% of our snaps. That's what I'm proposing to you.
Interesting. So this was the Colts would get, in addition to the 14th pick, the 21st pick.
Correct.
From Pittsburgh. I think there was, like a seventh rounder maybe thrown in there as well, just to kind of satisfy that. And obviously Anthony Richardson would be gone. This is an interesting one. I guess what I'm intrigued by is then would the Colts take a quarterback either at 14, 21, or in the middle of round 2?
Didn't Ballard say if there was a guy they really liked, they'd go get it? Wasn't that one of the things he said in his little
I don't
little
think
interview
they'd be
the
a
other day?
Shadur Sanders. I don't know. Jackson Dart. This is obviously I don't envision it happening. I guess just to answer it up front. But exactly how would you handle? I don't think you would then just give Daniel Jones the starting keys for 2025. But some might say, hey, at 14 you draft Tyler Warren. At 21 you draft whatever, the best linebacker, and then you win 7 games with Daniel Jones, and then you try and draft a quarterback for next year. Something along those lines there. That one I paused at. The one that was also in there and related to the Colts, I laughed at, but then I thought that is straight up Chris Ballard. So for the Colts proposal, he had them trading back from 14 all the way to Mark's Bears at 39. Now, what you would get 39 from the Bears, pick 41 from the Bears, and pick 72, which is in round 3 from the Bears.
And that
So
would
you
give
would
you
trade,
how many in the top 72?
You would trade 25 spots back out of round 1. You wouldn't draft till 39. 39 would be your first pick. You would have 39, 41. I believe their own second rounder, the Colts, is like 45. And then you'd have 2 in the third round as well. So you'd have like 5 picks from 39 to 75 versus having that 14th overall pick. I think the Colts would also give up a 4th rounder in that trade.
If they did something like that.
That is the poster child of Chris Ballard.
Yeah.
That screams a Chris Ballard move.
Now, that would have to be a draft day trade we're talking about, right? On draft day?
Well, I mean, I guess you could do it today if you would like. But
the reason I bring that up is, let's say that they are really set on, for example, a Tyler Warren.
And he's off
gone.
the board. Yeah.
At that point in time, you start to entertain things like that.
I just think why I don't like it is I think the roster needs more top 10 quality. I don't think the Colts have enough great players.
Well, even Ballard said that, talking about his tight ends. I like my guys, but we don't have a difference maker.
Tight end's a perfect example. They're just a bunch of dudes. You need dudes. Let me capitalize that. 72 Times New Roman font, bold, neon colors. You need more elite players. And I think you would have a better chance at that earlier in the draft. But certainly, that would be a scream of Chris Ballard draft. 5 picks from 39 to 75. I can see him foaming at the mouth about that.
I could see something like that. So going back to that Steelers proposal that you were talking about, what Barnwell wrote was, I like the fit for Richardson in the Steelers offense. His arm strength would be a terrifying combination with DK Metcalf and George Pickens. Coordinator Arthur Smith has incorporated quarterback run concepts in each of his stops, although he would likely need to lean into those concepts further with Richardson under center. He might not be an immediate starter if the Steelers sign Aaron Rodgers, but he could take a much-needed redshirt year and then start in 2026. Can you imagine the Steelers and their fans all of a sudden going with Aaron Rodgers and Anthony Richardson?
Would the Steelers like that? Would Steelers fans like that or no?
Steelers fans don't like much of anything unless they know they're going to the Super Bowl.
Well, they haven't been to the Super Bowl in a while. But like, hasn't the knock on the Steelers been they haven't found this quarterback? You know, they obviously tried.
Yeah, since Ben. They've tried everything.
They tried a Kenny Pickett. That was probably the biggest one from a first-round pick standpoint. But would they like a little bit of a long-term shot here versus
a one and done guy like Aaron Rodgers?
Or, last year with Russell Wilson?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm kind of I'm sure Steelers fans probably view it as like there's a bit of a, hey, no, you need to win now. That pick needs to be for an instant impact guy. Then I think I do think there are some Steelers people out there that view it as consistently great as Mike Tomlin has been. And as Hall of Fame worthy as Mike Tomlin's coaching career has been, there I think is a little bit of his time needs to come to an end.
Well, it's interesting.
We need to try something different. We need to try to the floor is absurdly high. We need to raise the ceiling.
I think everything is on the table right now. If you're going out and getting guys to truly come in and have him compete, if you got an offer you couldn't refuse, I think you probably, man, you again, we go back to you want to talk to Jim Irsay. Are the three of them tied together, Chris Ballard, Shane Steichen, and Anthony Richardson? And what does that do for Chris Ballard's job if he makes that deal?
So if that is true, let's say they are tied together, those three. Let's say you go 9-8 with Daniel Jones. Let's say you get the final wild card spot. Does that mean all three are gone next year? Or does that mean you're now tied at the hip with Daniel Jones?
Well, then you start taking credit for getting Daniel Jones in here, don't you?
This is where I'm like,
if you're Chris Ballard, all of a sudden you feel like Saul Goodman back there. Hey, look at what just happened. I know we lost our guy that we were tied to for the last 3 years, but we went out and we found this guy, and he might be our next quarterback for the next 10 years.
People,
that's what you try to sell at that point in time, right?
My one bit of professional advice for all of you out there, I don't give really any of it. My one bit of advice, find you a boss like Jim Irsay is to Chris Ballard. Find you that boss. Jeff Rickard, I want you to be that boss for me. Find you that boss.
You may not know, I might have already been that boss for you.
Well, thank you, I guess, for that. That's a scary thought, but thank you for that.
No, I like it, but I think those are... We're having fun with it, but that's a legitimate question for this franchise
no, it is.
right now.
And again, this is exactly why I would like to hear from Jim Irsay.
To clear some of these things up and get an idea of at least what his thought process is.
I don't need a pen letter that had little substance in it whatsoever on why you're exactly retaining them. Does nothing for me. And I think
what if Daniel Jones wins 10 games? Let's say that he takes the job over after week 3 and they end up winning 10 games.
Sure.
Then what?
And I think the deeper we get in the offseason, it just doesn't resonate enough. It's like, again, to try to play the boss analogy, it's the boss that speaks to you when times are really trying and explains the situation, motivates you, whatever you need from your boss, versus waiting and hoping until things get a little bit more rose-colored, and then they speak, and then they come out of the corner office. Well, I don't love that.
I
don't think your fans, frankly, deserve that.
All I know is on Monday morning, after the draft is all said and done, dusted, and they're getting ready to introduce guys, hey, we got every guy we wanted to get. We were hoping that it would fall this way. We made these deals. We did, for example, if they do trade. Yeah, we were really interested at somebody. They won't say specifics at 14, but that person was gone, so we decided to go a different tack. And from that point on, everything fell our way. That's what it's going to be on the Monday following the draft.
Well,
right?
yeah, I mean, they'll say that on the Thursday, Friday, and Saturday after those picks. We typically hear from Irsay, for those curious, we typically hear from him Saturday of the draft.
It's interesting because Barnwell had gone through the entire league and what they might want to do. That was really done from the Steelers' perspective.
Right. He did one for each team.
Yeah, but the
Colts' perspective was the trade back with the Bears.
Right.
The Steelers' perspective was the trade with Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, for just giving context to people if they're looking there. So a lot can happen between now and then and the OTAs. And you know that Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson are your quarterbacks right now. You're on the bully pulpit to go get a third one since Sam Ehlinger is going to be gone. Because, look, if Anthony Richardson goes down again and Daniel Jones has to step up and be the starting quarterback, then who's your backup?
Jimmy says Scott Skiles is with the Clippers right now in their front office.
Yeah, you think I just saw that he's gone, but he hasn't coached.
So is that a little Lawrence Frank connection?
Yeah, he hasn't coached since 2016 with Orlando.
Does he still hold the record for most assists in an NBA game?
I feel like someone might have eclipsed that recently, but I'll go back.
Scotty, is that right?
Scotty will know. Scotty will let us know coming up in a minute here. So that's what's going on as far as the Colts and things that may or may not happen, but it's fun to talk about, and it's that time of year. In the meantime, let's check it down here on a Wednesday, 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Kevin, I like to change the leads up every now and then. I'm just going to let you know that the Rangers shut out the Reds 1-0 yesterday.
No, what the hell?
Just happened.
Are you sure it's not an April Fool's joke?
It's not an April Fool's joke.
Luke has emailed me and said that the Dickinson thing was 1,000% an April Fool's joke. Do we have confirmation on Mark Sears that you brought up earlier?
The Dickinson one I did discover late last night was an April Fool's joke. But Sears, I'm waiting for somebody to prove it one way or the other. I'm not going either way. I'm not going either way.
Has been busy. Ryan Conwell from Pike, he found a home in Louisville. That will be Pat Kelsey and the Cardinals. I think some Indiana fans thought, maybe even hoped, that Ryan Conwell would be off to Indiana.
Did we talk enough about the turnaround that they had?
Louisville. Yeah, I mean, they had a great turnaround there in year one. Locally, we, again, continue to have some big names from a portal standpoint. You have Kanan Catchings from Brownsburg in the portal. Nigel Pack is back in the portal. The Lawrence Central product, Flory Badunga from Kokomo, the former Mr. Basketball, and Cathedral High School's own Xavier Booker, a very highly ranked recruit, went to play for Tom Izzo, Michigan State, never found very consistent production there. He is in the portal, so a lot of local action here. Butler did get a commit out of the portal yesterday from the Indiana high school ranks. That would be Jalen Jackson from Purdue Fort Wayne, averaged 19 a game, so a scoring guard. I would assume him, Finley Bizjack, maybe a little Evan Haywood. A little makeup for Butler's backcourt, and again, they're bringing in a loaded freshman class here for Thad Matta in what will be a very important season. Butler in action in the Crown today. That is out in Vegas, Boise State, 7 o'clock. They win, they get a little NIL money, and they'll be in the semifinals of that single
Everybody
elimination
needs a little
tournament.
NIL money, don't they?
A little NIL money action.
Come to Vegas, get a little NIL action on your way out,
spend
man.
it and hope that what you got in Vegas doesn't stay with you for the next 9 months.
Everybody else gets to come out here and, I'm sorry, you have to go home empty-handed, but NIL money for everybody else. NBA last night, the Indiana Pacers secured a playoff spot because of another loss, just other teams below them losing. That's how that works. They're trying to secure the number 4 spot in the Eastern Conference. Right now, they lead Detroit by 2 games, Milwaukee by 3, although the Bucks won last night, 133-123. You know what's interesting about this? On a night where Steph goes for 52, Jokic has a 61-point double-double and loses, the Milwaukee Bucks had the highest shooting percentage in a single game since 1998 in the NBA, almost 69% from the field last night, KB.
It was an impressive night for stat lines across the NBA, but indeed, the Pacers, again, they do clinch top 6 seed. They've got the Hornets tonight, their biggest favorite of the year, 14 points for the Indiana Pacers. They are trying to avoid a season sweep of the Hornets, which is just shocking to say. So this has been the Jacksonville Jaguars, if you will, of the Pacers.
All right, coming up in a minute, we'll talk more about the National Football League and the NBA night ahead right here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. You're stumping me, Corbin. Which one's this from?
One of the most underrated Val Kilmer movies, Willow.
I don't know that I ever saw Willow.
Yeah, Corbin, that's
Really?
I don't think I ever saw Willow.
It's really good. You need to watch it.
I've heard good things about it. I don't think I've ever seen that show. You
I
ever
think
see
I
Willow?
just no, Corbin, you were
Corbin, I didn't know you were such the movie
above my head. By the way,
guy.
Corbin, I did have someone reach
Cinephile
out.
over here.
And Corbin, back in the fall, I felt like, when Mark Dykton was on his 13 other vacations, Corbin filled in a lot. You happen to be filling in on some prediction days, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I know where this is going.
And Corbin, Jeff, I have to tell you, he was excellent in his predictions. I mean, for a while there, Corbin, you were on a streak like no other.
Mhm.
Honestly, probably one of your more accurate predictions was you were spot on about the Colts this past season. Now, he also happened to be filling in on the day that we offered our Pacers season predictions, if I'm not mistaken. Correct?
And what did you say then?
I said the Pacers would win 40 games this year. I put my foot in my mouth.
40 games he had. And for some reason, I thought it was in the 30s. Are you sure it was 40?
It was 40.
All right, 40. Corbin, how many wins right now for the Pacers?
Over 40.
40.
Over 40 is all he's going to give you.
With 7 to go.
Mm-hmm.
So Corbin has been tremendous, mostly football-wise. But I did have a listener point that out. Could you bring up to Corbin his Pacers win total? Now, not to share too much of my betting slip, but I am also sitting on a Pacers 50 win bet.
You better hope they go
Boys.
6-1 down the stretch.
Boys,
you better hope Cleveland doesn't play anybody those last two games.
I need Denver to be resting this weekend. Jokic had a big night last night. Can we get him a little load management coming up? I need 6 wins. Yeah, honestly, if you
How
look
many
at
outstanding tickets do you have right now?
those are my only 2.
As far as we know.
If you look at it on paper, though, assuming Cleveland's going to rest, I feel like it's a possibility.
I think
You're a 14-point favorite tonight. They're not 14-point favorites in the NBA.
I would imagine you get 1-1 with Cleveland, right? Probably a game where most guys sit out, and probably a game where
2
guys
with
play.
Cleveland and Denver. I need 2-1 in those 3, and then take care of business of Hornets, Jazz, Wizards, and what's the other one? Magic.
Mm-hmm.
God,
Magic are tough.
Magic have kind of had their number.
They're
too.
tough. I'm thinking probably 5-2 down the stretch is what I'm thinking.
I swear it's gonna be 49. I know there are a couple listeners that went with me on the 50 wins. So
Corbin has also secured for
Apologies.
us some Indy 11 tickets. Corbin, you want to tell me about
Ooh,
that?
what do you got?
We have Indy 11 tickets to give away coming up on April 5th.
How many do we have today?
This is a 4-pack.
It's a family 4-pack. I've got a Greg Rakestraw approved, vetted, and provided trivia question. KB, can you answer this question? Or do you already know the answer? You already looked at the question.
I
didn't you?
did.
Yeah.
I did look at it.
All right, here it is for what caller, Corbin?
Caller number 4.
Caller number 4. Family 4-pack, Indy 11. Great night. What team did the Indy 11 play in their first ever match on April 12th, 2014? 11 years ago. The team they are playing this weekend is going to be North Carolina FC. That's who they're playing this weekend. But who did they play in their first ever game, Corbin? You know the answer, too.
I do know.
That's the question. 239-1070, number to call, 239-1070. Before you saw the question, my answer would have been Cincinnati. Maybe that's right. Maybe that's wrong. Am I right or wrong? Do we know yet?
We don't know yet.
No. Okay.
Now, I don't know if it's April Fool's or not. I don't think it was. I think it was pretty official. Did I see Lance Lynn hung it up?
Officially?
I thought I saw that. Announced on his
Was
wife's
that
podcast.
an April Fool's Day
don't
joke,
know.
too?
All of a sudden, with all your Mark Sears and Hunter Dickinson, I'm a little nervous there. He had a great run. Lance Lynn, boy, I honestly think back to the Brownsburg Little League World Series teams. Bounced around a lot.
MLB.com says he retired.
And honestly, he pitched for Team USA a decent amount there. And I feel like, I feel like that's starting to gain a little bit more prominence, the World Baseball Classics and the Olympics, et cetera, et cetera. Won a World Series with the Cardinals and a great Major League career. So Tucker Barnhart still hanging on. Lance Lynn, 37 years old, hanging it up. By the way, I love my my Drew Store and Field of Dreams bourbon. That was excellent.
How much of that did you have?
Well, I finished off the whole bottle.
By yourself?
No, I certainly had some chipping in on that, but cannot recommend it more.
What's buzzed KB like? I'm everybody's best friend. That's what happens to me.
Yeah, I'd like to think I'm relatively tame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like everybody when I'm buzzed.
Nothing, bouncing off the walls. I don't think I attracted too much to the law enforcement back in the day in my younger days on the college campuses. So
I will tell you this though, I don't get buzzed very often. That doesn't happen very often.
No.
I
do enjoy, a drink or two, or maybe a third one on the weekend. And if all of a sudden these bet slips don't come through, the Pacers win in 50, and Houston Auburn in the national title, then I maybe we'll throw back an additional one. What will be the best story of the 4 teams winning it all? What's the best story?
Probably just the scratch and claw back for Bruce Pearl, don't you think? Because when you go back and you look at all the things he got in trouble for at the NCAA, the actual act itself didn't seem like such a big deal. From what I understand, the NCAA was upset more with. He felt that he was misleading the investigation. I just can't bring myself to root for that story, KB. I can't. I just can't get there. Be a great story for Houston. Might be a good story for college basketball. I don't think it's a good story for basketball fans here in the Hoosier State.
Yeah, I don't know what the best story. I mean, it's wild that I feel like these are the 4 teams that we have certainly talked about the most this season. Like, I didn't think there was any even number 1 seed debate really when we got to Selection Sunday, and that's not usually how the bracket pans out. Usually we have some sort of upset or two, if not more, when it comes to these 1 seeds. I don't know. I mean, if you can.
Plus, I don't want an SEC team to win either. I just don't want that to happen.
So you want Duke or Houston?
Yeah.
Is Duke a good story? Is John Shire? Shire has built it, I think, in an interesting way. He has the star-studded freshmen, and they're unbelievable. But he also made sure that a piece like Mason Gillis was found. And I thought he was open-minded to a little bit more of a, hey, we just can't literally throw the ball out with a bunch of 5-stars and think it's going to work. We've got to make sure there's some glue here with this puzzle. So I do appreciate that aspect to it. But, I don't know. Can I really root for Duke?
One of the discussions that
you have to root for the SEC, a cheater in your own state, or Duke. All of that sounds messy.
And here was an article that I read on Duke the other day. Someone wrote, is it possible that this Duke team is just impossible to not like? Like, everybody likes John Shire. Everybody likes Cooper Flagg. Everybody likes Con Knueppel. Everybody likes everybody on that team. There's no villain on that team. There isn't a Christian Leitner. There isn't a Grayson Allen.
Hell, people hated.
There isn't a Mike Krzyzewski.
Well, people hated Shire when he was a player. Greg Paulus, even. I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. I am very interested. The second game on Saturday night, I do think Duke lacks a very natural point guard, and I do think that could hurt them against this Houston defense. That is a storyline that I think is pretty relevant. What Braden Smith. I know what happened in a loss. Braden Smith having 15 assists and 3 turnovers against Houston is absurd. Point guards don't do that against Houston. And, look at Ziegler for Tennessee in the Elite Eight. Look at Ryan Nembhard in the round before. You don't see point guards having that. Well, Duke doesn't. Duke's lived really without a point guard. Duke did play in the easiest conference, I would say, of any of the major ones this season.
Yeah, it was top heavy with 3 or 4 and then nothing after that.
Well, I would argue, was it really top heavy? Louisville was an 8 seed. Clemson bowed out in round 1. I don't really think the ACC was good at all this year.
Carolina came on at the end of the year, so probably it's just
they
Duke,
didn't make,
Carolina.
they were fortunate to make the tournament. What I'm getting at is Houston's schedule is a lot different than Duke's. Auburn's schedule is a lot different than Duke. Florida's schedule a lot different than Duke. So when Houston ramps up that ball pressure coming up Saturday night, how does Duke handle that?
It'd be fun to watch, that's for sure. All right, still looking. Everybody is 0 so far on the phone calls. 239-1070, 4-pack Indy 11 tickets. What team did the Indy 11 play in their first ever match on April 12th, 2014?
Do we want to give a hint?
No.
Okay.
If people want a hint, they know how to go get it in today's world, don't you think?
I'm always confused. I must admit, when we do give away these ticket giveaways, part of me always likes to do a non-team related question to get maybe people that haven't been to it. The only person that's getting this question right is an Indy 11 fan.
I would imagine in today's world, I'll say it again, that you can go find these answers, right?
Well, sure, you could Google it, but I'd like to think people have some integrity out there.
Not for 4-pack.
So maybe we could throw out, I don't know, a different question there.
What question do you have?
Well, I don't want to confuse the audience. Are we sticking
Is
with your
Tiger
question
Woods going
here?
to play in the Masters this year?
Gosh,
Yes
I
or no?
wish. I wish. I think we're gonna have Will Haskett on next week. I always enjoy our converse
love
with
Will.
Will.
Love that stuff. All right. Coming up in a minute, we'll also have the Jiffy Lube stat of the day. We'll try to give away that 4-pack of the Indy 11 if you can get that trivia question correct. And we'll wrap up a day getting ready for the Pacers at home again tonight against, you would think it would be an easy game, but it just hasn't worked out that way against tonight's opponents. We'll tell you more next on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Right there, Corbin. Val Kilmer in his final appearance in the Top Gun movie recently released. Passed away yesterday at the age of 65.
Corbin, you've been great all morning long with those re-entries. Thank you
Yeah.
for that. I just, it's not the most, eloquent memory maybe from watching the movie, but, I just think to myself, damn, they look so cool. I wish I was them. That's just how I feel just watching Top Gun.
When Top Gun came out,
every time it comes on.
that movie was so big. I was still in school, obviously, at the time. But I remember going to see that, and it was one of those movies you went back and saw 3-4 times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, that's a stopper of the old remote, the old TV guide.
All right. We have a winner, Corbin, for our Indy 11 4-pack, correct?
Yes, we do.
What team did the Indy 11 play in their first ever match on April 12th, 2014? I thought it was Cincinnati. I was wrong. The answer is
North Carolina FC.
They were a different name back then, though,
Yes,
right?
they were. They were actually
Cross this up, Greg.
the Carolina. That tells you how. Railhawks. Thank you.
Railhawks. That's what it was.
Yep. Railhawks.
So we've got that going on. So the Indy 11 will get back in action. They got the U.S. Cup coming a week or two as well, I think. And we'll find out, I think, when that schedule gets released. I might be today, as a matter of fact.
What do you want to see from the Pacers tonight?
Just take care of business. Just don't get behind early. Don't make it a fight. Get out to a double-digit lead somewhere around halftime and just play your game and get out of here and don't mess around with a team that's giving you all kinds of problems all year long. They're missing their two best players in LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller. Grant Williams has been out all season, so it's not really much of a factor there. But you can't lose to what's left of this basketball team, Kev.
Well, you've lost him twice already this season. Once as a 12-point favorite, once as a 6-point favorite. They are a 14-point favorite tonight, the Pacers. One thing to note, sounds like a little illness maybe in the, I don't know if there's such thing as the center room, but Tony Bradley is out tonight due to illness, their third center. Turner's been upgraded to questionable. I would assume Turner would be good to go, or else, you could be looking at more of that small ball lineup we saw the other night when Thomas Bryant is on the floor. Or, I don't know, maybe even an Enrique Freeman minute or two. So, Benedict Mather and Miles Turner both upgraded to questionable for tonight. So
I want Johnny Furphy to play 14 minutes in this game.
Yeah, it was like a Ray J. Dennis game.
Let's go.
Yeah, to be fair to the Pacers, they did have one of those last week against the Wizards. Can you get something similar to where, tonight and really Friday will be kind of the same storyline. Friday's going to be another one of these where you entered a week, Kings on Monday, Hornets tonight, Jazz Friday, 3 teams bound for the lottery. The Kings were easily the best of those 3. So you survived Monday. Now it's a very much of a play to your standard, not to the competition type of night here, and we'll see how the Pacers handle it.
Airtime 6:30 here on The Fan. Of course, Mark Boyle has the play-by-play beginning at 7 o'clock, and it's time for the Jiffy Lube stat of the day. On this Wednesday, KB, we've been talking about all the crazy statistics that have been thrown around the NBA lately. Nikola Jokic scored 61 points with 10 rebounds and 10 assists as the Nuggets lost to the T-Wolves last night. Steph Curry had 52 and 10 boards in the Warriors win at Memphis. It marked the 7th time in NBA history and the first time since 1963 that multiple players recorded 50-point double-doubles on the same day. Of the other 6 occurrences, all 6 occurred between December of 61 and February of 63, KB. You think about today's enhanced offenses and getting up and down the floor, these records go back to 61 to 63. All 6 included one name, and I think that's an easy one to get.
Wilt.
Yep. It was Wilt Chamberlain.
When all else fails, guess Wilt.
4 of the 6 were the combination of Wilt and Elgin Baylor. The other 2 players who paired up with Wilt on 50-point double-doubles were fellow Hall of Famers Jerry West and Richie Guerin.
You think, DiMaggio 56-game hit streak is untouchable, right?
Yep.
No one's ever going to touch it. We brought up earlier in the show Scott Skiles. Why did we bring him up? Kelvin Sampson had mentioned after the game on Friday night that they got that play, the L.J. Cryer, what was supposed to be the L.J. Cryer play at the end of the Purdue game. They got that play from Scott Skiles when he was on staff with him with the Bucks, and they were actually trying to get Luke Ridnour open for shots underneath the basket there, out-of-bounds plays underneath the basket. So, when you think about Scott Skiles, you think about the NBA record for assists. We asked Scotty.
He came up with an answer.
Scott Skiles still has the NBA record of 30 assists. He says the active leaders, Halliburton has a 23-assist night, and Russell Westbrook has done 24 assists twice. You think anyone, 30 assists.
It's insane. You also probably need I'm guessing you need a home court appearance to do that as well.
So the statistician kind of gives you a few of those hockey assists turned into an
two
actual.
or three that's an assist.
Right. Yeah, Miles Turner takes, 7 dribbles after getting the ball, and then you still give him the assist. You think 30 is untouched? I don't think it's 56 hit game untouchable. 56 game hit streak untouchable, I should say. But, man,
I think
30 assists? You imagine, 8 a quarter?
Yeah. I think the 56 game hit streak is more unlikely just because you're looking at sometimes 4 or 5 different guys in a game that are all bringing their best stuff for the 1 or 2 innings that they're going to pitch. So,
do you think you have to decide it before? Like, does Halliburton have to walk on the floor and be like, tonight I'm going for 30 assists? Hell, should Halliburton decide that one of these final games of the year if they've already clinched?
It's good. I think it's one of those situations. Everything has to be exactly right. You're running up and down the floor. Your team's probably going to score 160 points, and you just happen to be the point guard that's delivering to every hot guy that you have. Like the Bucks shoot from 69% last night. You'd have to have one guy throwing the scorers the ball every time.
So Halliburton, remember the Lakers last week, he had 18 assists in that game, and he barely played in the fourth quarter. And if I remember correctly, he had close to that number like at the end of the third. But still, even then, you're asking him to get 12 more assists. That's just, it seems like overtimes would have to be involved. Boy, I'd love to watch that Scott Skiles 30 assist game just to see how it unfolded.
Well, we talk about records we never thought would fall. The career goal scoring record's going to fall soon. Alex Ovechkin is now just 4 goals, I think, behind Gretzky. Right,
and
so
that's
coming up.
That was thought to be for a while untouchable, right?
Yep. And I think the points is probably going to be tough to get, but while Ovechkin is chasing down Wayne Gretzky's all-time goals record, Sidney Crosby broke another Gretzky's record earlier this week. He had a goal against the Buffalo Sabres. That's his 20th season, averaging a point per game.
Yeah, Lord makes a good point here in the YouTube chat. Yeah, it's one of those things where if like Halliburton were to end a first quarter with like 9 or 10 assists,
then you go for it.
Then you kind of go for it.
Yeah.
30 is just such a big number.
And this has got to be the time of year for that too. Like if you're cruising to a win over the Charlotte Hornets and you had 9 assists in the first quarter and you got a nice little lead and your playoff positioning is pretty secure, you just throw caution to the wind and go for it, right?
Yeah, definitely.
If that's what I said. Everything has to line up perfectly in that. But yeah, records happen. Look at the Bob Beamon long jump record that stood forever and then was broken out of nowhere and still hasn't been approached since. So you never know. Some of these things are weird.
Summer show. What are the untouchable sports records?
Well, it's because it's happening right now with Ovechkin, though.
Right.
And the other one came up, and we had the first time since 1998 a team shot 69% from the field as the Bucks won last night.
So remind again, Pacers, Hornets tonight. Pacers have yet to beat the Hornets this season, as shocking as that sounds. Indiana did clinch a playoff spot last night. So when you go to the game tonight, if you are going, you'll probably see an acknowledgement of that. It was because the Hawks lost last night, so the Pacers are definitely going to be one of the top 6 seeds, and now they're trying to play for home court here coming up in the playoffs, and they are in a very good position to have home court here in round 1. If you missed it yesterday, we got that Rick Carlisle audio up on the podcast.
Looking forward to that. Thanks for hanging out with us today. We appreciate it as always. Corbin, another great job today. Scott Johnston continues to amaze us every single day with his intimate knowledge and impeccable
Corbin, thank you for raising the bar when Mark is out.
He's done. Have a great day. It'll be Jake at noon, JMV at 3. We'll see you tomorrow morning.